Miller-Tomini Show, a politics show that's fearless.
No, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid. That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airways before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Good morning, Britain. Good evening, America. We are live from London. This is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph.
A victory for America? The White House hails Operation Epic Fury a military success, but
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed.
United no more. President Trump has reportedly discussed America leaving NATO in a tense meeting with its chief at the White House. And
Iran has agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz.
Cracks in the ceasefire. Iran has reportedly stopped oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz, breaching the terms of its ceasefire. And tonight, a bombshell revelation about where Sir Keir Starmer has been all this time. Elsewhere,
we will smash the gangs, we will crack down on illegal working, we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
Sun's out, boats out. 5,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel this year, with another 300 crossing today. And
the bureaucrats in Brussels, those people should not be listened to.
Brussels battle. JD Vance accuses a corrupt Brussels of manipulating European elections and rips into Labour and Sir Keir Starmer. Plus,
men playing in women's sports. Would you believe we have an argument over that?
FIFA under fire. The White House is demanding a ban on transgender players in the Women's World Cup or risk losing America's support to host the tournament. I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. I promise I will get my speed to the table right one of these days, but it always feels like a very last-second rush. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in London from our GB News studios is my panel of political commentator Claire Muldoon, former Labor advisor Stella Santakidou and international security expert Henry Bolton. And in Washington is the executive director, I should say, of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosha. Thank you all for joining me tonight.
You're welcome.
Well, look, no countdown timer to Armageddon this evening, but there is certainly still a lot of uncertainty around where the world sits, both in Europe and the Middle East. We'll move on to that with our breaking news story this evening. The United States has held frank and candid conversations about leaving the NATO alliance as President Trump met with Secretary-General Mark Rutte. The Wall Street Journal is also reporting that the Trump administration is considering plans to punish members of NATO who were unhelpful to America and Israel during the Iran war by possibly moving American troops out of those countries and stationing them in more supportive countries. A little earlier, the White House Press Secretary, Caroline Leavitt, shared this stark message directly from the President.
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed. And I would add, it's quite sad that NATO turned their backs on the American people over the course of the last 6 weeks when it's the American people who have been funding their defense.
And tonight, it looks like the 2-week ceasefire in Iran is growing even more fragile by the moment, despite remarks like these.
Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph.
Because it's being reported that Iran has stopped oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz, breaching the terms of its ceasefire with America. The regime's state media is reporting that traffic has been forcibly halted in response to Israel carrying out its heaviest strikes of the war against Lebanon. That's despite the White House this evening confirming that Lebanon was not included in the terms of the 2-week ceasefire. This is what Vice President J.D. Vance had to say when asked on the issue earlier tonight.
Well, we've already seen an increase in traffic today. Hopefully we'll see an increase in traffic tomorrow. We actually think that we are seeing signs that the straits is starting to reopen. I think you guys have probably seen oil prices have come down, so I think the oil markets, the gas markets are seeing the same thing. But the president's very, very clear. The deal is a ceasefire, a negotiation. That's what we give. And what they give is the straits are going to be reopened. If we don't see that happening, the president is not going to abide by our terms if the Iranians are not abiding by their terms.
And tonight, Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has said his country still has goals in its war with Iran, despite the ceasefire, as he vows to remove Iran's nuclear material from the country, either by winning the war or reaching a deal. And now there is this bombshell. The Times newspaper is reporting that Sir Keir Starmer was on the last day of his holiday in Spain with his family when President Donald Trump threatened to obliterate civilization in Iran. So why is he acting like this?
There's work to do. It's early days. There is a real sense, I think, of relief. You could feel it at the base here in Saudi Arabia. For 39 days, they've been acting in our collective self-defense. You can feel the relief.
I'm sure that settles all of your collective minds at home. And some breaking news to bring you within the past few minutes. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has said he believes that some NATO countries were tested and failed amid President Trump's criticism over European allies not getting involved in the US and Israel's war against Iran. I'll go to my panel to start. Henry, I'll start with you. We know the art of the deal. Start with something outrageous, pressure the other side, pull back to where ultimately you want to get to. We've heard end of civilization rhetoric, no follow through. We've heard that the ceasefire was conditional upon the Strait of Hormuz being reopened. It has been, from what we can hear, reopened very briefly and then closed again. From what we can hear, that will not lead to any changes in the short term in the American position. The question I want to start with, and I want the panel to think about, is has Trump played the art of the deal one time too many? Do the Iranians, and when we're talking with Mark Rutte with NATO, do they still take Trump's threats seriously, or now do they go, well, look, this is empty rhetoric, and as a result of that, we don't have to acquiesce to the demands of the Americans?
I think none of the above, and I don't think he's played a blinder at all. If we think back to the beginning of this, there were essentially three war aims. The first was to destroy Iran's nuclear capability in terms of producing the bomb and the means to deliver it, which is the ballistic missiles. The second was to at least disrupt, if not destroy, their ability to project violence and instability across the Middle East region. And the third was a nice to have, which was it was actually, I think it was the president or it was the vice president who said to create space for the Iranian people should they choose to take the opportunity to replace the regime. Now, as far as I can see, perhaps the first aim has been achieved. Mm-hmm. The second certainly hasn't. That's why the Israelis are still bombing Lebanon, Hezbollah. And the third certainly hasn't. They've still got the same regime in. The supreme leader is the son of the previous one. It's the same regime. It's still the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps who are effectively in charge of their defence. So nothing has changed. Except that now Iran has more leverage over shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. So I don't think that at the moment, this certainly, although, of course, the White House and the President are going to present this as some sort of success and in terms of a deal being struck, it is not. And there's something else at play here, and that is that the United States doesn't have all its military assets in place yet. They're waiting for those assets because at the moment we've got the USS George Bush, the aircraft carrier strike group, moving to the region, and we've got still the Boxer Marine Expeditionary Unit en route. So we've got significant military assets that are going to arrive by the end of this month, which is the 2-week period that Trump has been talking about for a ceasefire.
And we'll go deeper on that 2-week period and how we think it will play out over the course of the evening. But Stella, I want to go to you on NATO. Trump was warning of potentially the impending end of NATO if his demands are not met. Do you think that the West and Europe needs to legitimately worry about the future of NATO given Donald Trump's comments?
We have been worrying about NATO for a while now, but I do think that NATO is going to outlive Donald Trump because he needs Congress to vote if he wants to leave. It's not as simple, and I really don't think that he's going to manage to. I think it sounds very desperate, the way he's trying to delegitimize it. I think that his ego was hurt by the fact that so many European leaders, including European leaders from the right-wing parties that he thought were on his side, like Giorgia Meloni in Italy, Marine Le Pen, and even Alternative for Germany, have distanced themselves over his policy in Iran. So I think that he was very shaken by that, and that is why he's doing what he's doing now. But I don't really believe it. I think that NATO has a very long history, and I think that there are deeper interests there.
Claire, at the same time, some of Trump's more forceful rhetoric against NATO has at least led to rhetorical promises of increases in defence spending. So there has been some signs that this sort of tactic works. How do you see this playing out?
Well, there has been some shift because we've actually increased our defence spending. Well, at least that's what John Healey was told to tell us. Let's see if that actually happens. But what this has actually shown is our military and our strategic incompetence in dealing with any form of strategy in this Iran war and the takeover of whatever's happening with any regime. We know that Iran has got the capability for firing missiles, possibly with a nuclear head on them too. But where is our defence capability for that? Now, NATO has got nothing at all to do with that. We were questioning where is NATO as a defence team, as a defence unit many weeks ago when Trump was chastising the UK at a very high level, very voluble high level, and indeed now, as Stella has quite rightly said, the rest of Europe seem to be distancing themselves from Trump. I do think NATO will stay it out. When Trump came into election in his second term, he was shouting about NATO, calling the shots, saying America's going going to pull out because we're bearing the brunt of it financially.
I want to bring in Tim Dosha, Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity from Washington, D.C. Tim, thank you for joining us. We have heard from Mark Rutte with diplomatic language, an open and frank conversation apparently. I dare say Donald Trump will not be quite as diplomatic. What can we expect, possibly via Truth Social Post, possibly tonight, to come from the White House following these discussions if you had a crystal ball?
A worthy conversation of happening when you're talking about punishing NATO countries who did not step up to the challenge, to the test. I mean, we saw the missile capability that Iran currently has, and guess what? They go to London, they go to Paris, they reach further than we ever thought they would. So what are you doing? Are you just going to sit there and you're going to continue to do that? Look, I went back and looked. NATO countries have been talking about the threat in Iran for decades. For decades, leaders have been talking about this, this threat, that we have to do something about it. Diplomacy, diplomacy, diplomacy. Well, look, President Trump is the only person to actually do something to where he can say they no longer have an Air Force. They no longer have a Navy. They no longer have long-range ballistic missile capability like they did before. And also they don't have a nuclear program like they were building. This is an absolute win, and it's an absolute signal to NATO, as President Trump is saying, that, look, we need this alliance, but at the same time, we don't need this alliance. It's your choice. And I think NATO is going to have to be the one to reckon with this, not President Trump.
We'll be talking about the calculus for NATO as well as the Americans throughout the course of the evening. But I want to bring in the non-resident Senior Fellow of Middle East Programs at the Atlantic Council, Alyssa Pavia now. Alyssa, thank you very much for joining us this evening. If we have Alyssa on the line.
Yep. Hi.
There she is. Alyssa, lovely to see you. We've been talking about the conversation between President Donald Trump and Mark Rutte. We have heard from Mark Rutte talking to CNN. We are yet to hear from the White House. How do you see the NATO alliance as it stands as we enter a ceasefire in the conflict in Iran? Well, hopefully a ceasefire in the conflict. And do you think the relationship between America and the rest of its NATO allies is under existential threat?
The relationship between EU countries and the United States is very much under existential threat. This is not the first time that President Trump has threatened to withdraw U.S. troops from NATO, or the U.S. in general from NATO. Right now, he is particularly upset at the Europeans because they did not come to his aid in Iran. What we're going to see this weekend or next week when Secretary General Rutte and Trump meet is likely a pause in hostilities, or we won't see a complete resolve of all the issues because the underlying tensions will remain there, which is the European countries not coming to the U.S.'s aid when it needed, and the ongoing conversation about the EU spending.
The question, Alyssa, that has been crossing my mind all day is, has Trump run the art of the deal one time too many? So we heard yesterday about a threat to Iran's civilization. We've heard that he would immediately end the ceasefire if the Strait of Hormuz was not open. It is at the moment, to our knowledge, not open. There hasn't been any action from the US. The question that I have, particularly when Trump is now talking about the pulling out of NATO if his demands aren't met, do you think that the NATO alliance is taking these threats seriously, given that there is maybe a growing perception that Trump doesn't follow through on the threats that he makes?
European countries have taken Trump very seriously in recent months, to the point that Secretary General Rutte has maintained open channels of communication throughout and has also wanted to show President Trump that the EU is, European countries are willing to stay in NATO. They want the US as well to stay in NATO. They want NATO to remain the core defense system of Europe. Rutte has made this clear several times, and European countries have also stepped up their responsibility when it comes to their defense spending. Therefore, they do take what Trump is saying very seriously, but they're also taking steps to ameliorate that relationship. Whether or not that will be enough for President Trump remains to be seen.
And turning to the conflict in the Middle East more directly, Israel has continued its bombing campaign in Lebanon. In fact, if anything, it has accelerated that bombing campaign despite the ceasefire. Now, we have heard from the White House that that Lebanon was not part of this ceasefire deal. At the same time, I think JD Vance said words to the effect of, guys, come on, do us a favour, and in the interests of making this ceasefire work, pull back or ease off a bit. Does that demonstrate perhaps a lack of coordination or communication between Israel and the United States that they have continued this bombing campaign in Lebanon over the course of the day?
It signals both a lack of coordination between the U.S. and Israel, but also a lack of priorities and what it is that they aim to achieve. For Israel, it is imperative that its northern border remains secure from continued incursions by Hezbollah, and therefore it does not want to back down even in these 2 weeks of ceasefire. This is different than what the U.S. needs or wants, and therefore there is a mismatch in priorities and fundamentally how to continue the ceasefire. Also, don't forget that, there was a pressure that was building on the side of, with the U.S. Threats with the 8 p.m. ceasefire. And so it's not surprising that we're seeing a mismatch in communication when it comes to specific outcomes on the ground.
That's an interesting way of phrasing it, and we have heard from certain people that Trump is effectively at the behest of Benjamin Netanyahu. For the record, I think that is a nonsense. I think Trump basically does what he wants to do as opposed to being dictated to by anyone. Nonetheless, it is important that Israel and America are aligned if there is to be any sort of peace with Iran. How do those mismatched priorities get reconciled over this 2-week period of negotiations?
So a lot hinges, especially on what is going to happen in the Strait of Hormuz. Like you said earlier, the opening of the Strait of Hormuz is imperative to U.S. interests. And so this really lies in the hands of Tehran, whether they will reopen or not. And only based on that will the U.S. decide if the ceasefire maintains or not. With regards to its strategic relationship with Israel, they are mostly aligned on most issues, especially when it comes to Iran. But we have seen divergences in the past that have led to small cracks in the relationship between Netanyahu and Trump. However, it's not. I don't think that it's necessarily what we're going to see in this regard now. But
Alyssa Pavia, thank you very much for your time this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know your thoughts by visiting gbnews.com/your say. I will be reading out your comments as we progress through the morning. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
Putin's aggression does not stop in Ukraine. Russian spy ships menace our waters.
Move over Winston Churchill. Vladimir Putin has absolutely mocked Sir Keir Starmer by openly defying his threat to seize sanctioned Russian vessels. But first tonight, I could watch it a million times. I nerd out on this stuff. History above our heads. Artemis 2 is taking humans back around the moon, and we're live with NASA joining GB News for the very first time next. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business. Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
And
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We will smash the gangs, we will crack down on illegal working, we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. As we get our expert from NASA on the line, I'm going to go to our panel and I want to continue on with the discussion on Iran that we were having before the break. Stella, I will go with you. We heard from Patrick in his own inimitable way on the previous show talk about Starmer taking a holiday as the world is in crisis. Do you think it's reasonable to criticise him for taking that break right at the time that Donald Trump is threatening to erase an entire civilization?
I mean, he's going to the Middle East, so he's hardly on holiday right now, but Parliament was in recess, so...
Different rules do apply for the Prime Minister, though, right?
You
need to be seen to be on top of a situation in a time of crisis. And as the Middle East is in a very tumultuous period, surely that counts as a time of crisis.
He is on his way to the Middle East, right?
Sure, but what I'm saying is at the very moment that Donald Trump is threatening Iran in the most extraordinary of terms, he's standing on a beach.
No, that is exactly when he was returning. I mean, the conflict has been going on for a while now. They started on the 28th of February. Recess is now, during the Easter holidays.
Okay. Non-issue? Is it a non-issue? Am I making too big a deal of this, Claire?
Well, I don't think you are, only for the fact that Trump is so erratic, right? I don't think anyone could have planned that. You would never have a holiday, let's be honest.
Yeah, fair, Henry?
He's got John Healey. Where's John Healey?
2008, I found myself in a particular position where just about every leader in Europe was on holiday. And I was in a particular job which standing in for somebody who was standing in for somebody who was away on holiday when Russia went into Georgia. And trying to get any senior people in any European capital on the line was just about impossible. It took about 4 days for people to come back.
I didn't know you were 200 years old.
2008.
Communication has shifted.
Yeah, but it's not just the communications, it's the discussion, it's the decision-making and so on. It's quite difficult when everybody's dispersed. Should he have been there? I wouldn't have been. The world is in crisis at the moment. We've got the Ukraine war, we've got troubles in the Middle East. Even at that point, we knew the Americans were, we'd got Greenland going on, we'd got threats against Canada. This is not a time for the British Prime Minister to be away in another country, I think. However, that said, we've got a Prime Minister who doesn't understand hard power. And he doesn't understand that you don't possess soft power unless you possess and have shown a credible willingness to use hard power. So we've got a Prime Minister who I think fundamentally doesn't understand how hard power works in diplomacy and in theatres of war. I don't think he gets it. So it doesn't surprise me that he's away, and it doesn't surprise me that probably nobody around him told him that it was not a particularly good time to be away.
Well, I think that point about not understanding how hard power is also one of the big reasons why you have a Russian tanker and supported by a Russian armed force naval ship in the English Channel today, because they weren't scared of the potential hard power that would come their way if they were to do that. On the Starmer holiday issue, on balance, I agree with you. I don't think he should have been there. But the one hesitation that I have is that everyone at home watching this knows that we have an incredibly poor quality of politician in this country at the moment. It has got steadily worse over the last 30 years. And one of the reasons for that is because they do get, not without reason, an incredibly hard time, and their life is pretty scummy, to be honest, in that you are consistently under the public scrutiny. You don't get the same sort of leeway. Now I can hear everyone at home saying, "Bad luck, you're on the public purse."
Well, they've chosen that route.
They've chosen that route.
And Starmer chose to be Prime Minister.
Yes, he did.
He wanted to be the leader of the Labour Party.
I think this does, in part, come into a broader conversation around how do we get better quality people into politics, and is allowing them to take a holiday every now and then part of that.
Well, he does have a family. We need to remember that as well, with kids at school. So it might have been the only time where they could have had. And Spain is not a million miles away. They weren't jetting off, elsewhere. Yes, the timing's bad. Yes, the optics bad. Yes, he's badly advised. But we're used to that.
I think
That's been the Starmer administration.
This wouldn't be a conversation that we'd be having if this entire sequence of crises had been handled with competence and with clear strategic decision making, but it hasn't been. It's been characterised by hesitation, by a lack of strategic clarity, by sort of
moral clarity. It's been characterised by moral clarity, which is when you have an American leader who is basically threatening war crimes, you do not say absolutely we are coming to your rescue.
I wasn't for a second implying that should have been the response. However, when it takes you over a week to decide whether you're going to deploy a naval warship or not, you are a problem when it comes to strategic military decision-making as a civilian.
Whereas you would take a military decision of that kind of level without first trying
very quickly. I was a joint operations planner for the British, and I worked advising the United States Marine Corps at 2-, 3-, and 4-star level, and I've been in 5 wars. I can tell you that there are decision-making processes which the political level is fully supported in making. If those decisions are not made, it is a failure of strategic leadership on the civilian political side. Now, I would say that the point is not going in to necessarily support and participate in strikes against Iran, because the United Kingdom could not bring anything additional to the table in terms of capability there. The Americans and the Israelis have all that's needed to do that. However, we have bases, we have territories, we have people, we have allies, and we have a whole range of interests in the Middle East which we should have been taking proactive measures to protect, defend and secure. We did not do that until it was too late. That's a problem.
So your argument here is that, from what I remember, there are like 14 vessels left in the British Navy. Is your argument that that Keir Starmer came into government almost 2 years ago now, a year and a half ago, and he was not able to reverse the 14 years of cuts on our defense spending within that time to make sure that we do have the kind of military capacity.
Just very briefly, to answer that very briefly, no, he is not the man. Tony Blair, David Cameron and George Osborne, who was Chancellor under David Cameron, particularly decimated the British Armed Forces, unforgivably so. And we are still bearing the consequences of that badly. However, this is a government now that has got a strategic defence review and has failed utterly to fund it. The money that this government has pledged for defence has not yet been forthcoming, and now it looks as though it's not going to be delivered under their commitments until after the next general election. So they're kicking the can down the road so that to a point in time when they're probably not even responsible for it. In the meantime, we've got civilian industries and businesses in the defence sector, in the private sector, who are trying to get things going and do things for the armed forces, who are going bust because the government won't even give a commitment on its future financial planning.
And of course, this goes to the broader question of how long can Keir Starmer continue to say, well, I was left a mess by the Tories and therefore I'm trying to fix it, which is his answer to every single question.
Correct. If he wants to do something, publish the Defence Investment Plan now.
Surely on a range of different issues now, that stock standard response is wearing a tad thin with the British people. We will continue on that, but first, to space. The astronauts aboard Artemis 2 are embarking on their 4-day journey home to Earth after conducting a historic lunar flyby. Commander Reid Wiseman says the Orion spacecraft crew has seen sights that no human has ever seen, including a total solar eclipse, with NASA releasing this image in the last few hours, and it is absolutely beautiful, showing the moon passing in front of the sun. With me now is the Deputy Lunar Science Lead for Artemis 2, the Artemis 2 mission, Dr. Jacob Richardson. This is the first time that we have had a representative from NASA on GB News. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us. I'm incredibly excited to chat to you. Whilst keeping the mood of excitement and wonder going, I must admit, and I don't think I'm throwing anyone under the bus here, when I asked my panel if really in their heart of hearts they really cared about this mission, there were mixed responses. Why should we care?
We should care about the moon because it's our nearest neighbor. I'm really pleased to be on your show because, you know, I love the moon. I hope most of your panelists love the moon too. It's something that unites us all. Everyone, every human ever who's looked at the moon has seen the same moon. We share it. It is a witness plate for our place in the solar system because most of the rocks there are older than the rocks here. And so if we want to learn about our planet, you know, what better place to go than to explore our moon?
What else are we hoping to learn from this mission? I'm aware, really, I guess the end goal for so many people at NASA and in the space community is getting to Mars. Does this play into that overarching goal?
Absolutely. This mission is a test mission, right? It's a test mission in several ways. But one of the ways it's a test mission is that we're testing out how to do lunar science. We haven't done lunar science at the moon for 53 years. And let me tell you, in the past couple of days, we've learned that we're ready to study the moon with crew again.
Yeah, and again, the one thing which, looking at the images that we have seen, seeing the free advertising for Nutella, it has been incredibly exciting and fun to watch. There was, perhaps for some people, a slight disappointment that we didn't actually see boots on the ground on the moon, to use that phrase in entirely the wrong context. Why didn't we actually have a landing on the moon for this particular voyage?
Yeah, think back to Apollo. Apollo 11 wasn't the first Apollo mission. We have to test. Our objective here at NASA is to make sure that our friends that we send up in space are safe, they're able to do their job well, and they can come home safely. That meant that Artemis 1, we had to send our Orion capsule to the moon and back to make sure it was ready to put humans in. Artemis 2, we have to make sure that our crew are safe. inside of this capsule. Artemis 3 is now going to test out how we can dock with our human landing system. And we have to do all these things, and we have to do them in space in order to be successful at the lunar surface and keep our buddies safe. It's, safety is our top priority. Safety is not an accident, is on a sign every morning when I come into Johnson Space Center to work on this mission. And that's something that we take to heart here.
As we look ahead to the future of space exploration, when can people hope to see the first man or woman on Mars?
NASA's shooting for 2028, and let me tell you, we're going to go when we're ready, when our crew is going to be able to go safely. And the science teams, I'm a scientist, I'm a lunar scientist. I can speak to you about science all day long, and I can speak to you about the moon even longer. But we're ready to train the astronauts today. We're ready to tell them what places on the lunar surface we'd like them to explore once they actually get there. And yeah, I want to be an astronaut too. And I'm really happy when I see all my friends, who are eager to learn about the moon, because one day they can actually set foot on it.
Thank you for answering that question from my panellist, Claire Muldoon. I was a terrible science student, Jacob, so I won't risk a ratings catastrophe by bringing that into the conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. We will definitely get you back on the channel when the crew arrives back on Earth to discuss what has been a wonderful expedition for humanity, as well as the United States of America. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
The bureaucrats in Brussels, those people should not be listened to.
Yeah, I find that hard to argue with. JD Vance has accused a corrupt Brussels of manipulating European elections and rips into Labour and Sir Keir Starmer. But first tonight,
Putin's aggression does not stop in Ukraine. Russian spy ships menace our waters.
yes, Vlad is quaking in his boots. A direct snub from Moscow as Vladimir Putin mocks Sir Keir Starmer by openly defying his threat to seize sanctioned Russian vessels. This is The Late Show Live, only on the People's Channel, GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
We'll be discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is that true? This is fascinating, isn't it? The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered.
Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement?
You know what? It's a great question, Olivia. So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m. only on GB News.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live, and it is the great thrill of doing this show in 2026 is we literally do not know the state of the world by the end of the third hour. It's a rapidly developing situation, changing minute by minute. America has held talks in which there has been a threat by Donald Trump to pull out of the NATO alliance, and now it looks like the ceasefire between America, Iran and Israel is under grave threat. I'll bring you an update on everything we know in the Middle East and across the conversations between NATO and Donald Trump as we find out across the morning. But first tonight, Vladimir Putin has openly defied Sir Keir Starmer's threat to seize sanctioned Russian vessels by sending a warship to escort them through the channel. According to The Telegraph, the ship accompanied a pair of Shadow Fleet ships earlier today, while a British naval vessel followed behind. Just recently, Sir Keir Starmer had given special forces the authority to capture ships illegally, ferrying oil to support Russia's war in Ukraine, saying he would hit the Shadow Fleet even harder if they sailed through British waters. But Britain is yet to seize a single Russian ship. Stella, I'll go to you first on this one. And I think that there is a broader conversation here about the decline of British hard and soft power, but also surely that this is a reflection that the Russians do not respect Keir Starmer and certainly aren't worried about any potential blowback if they are to openly defy orders to enter the channel.
I mean, we are at war with Russia, so yeah, I would say they probably don't respect Keir Starmer or the UK more generally.
Well, you can respect your enemies.
No, I think they don't respect our democracy. I think they hold our values in contempt, and I think that he is also very desperate because Ukraine has been doing really well in terms of attacking their oil facilities. They have been attacking them in the Baltic Sea. They have been using drones, and Russia has really been struggling. So this is. You present this as this being Putin not respecting or not being afraid enough of the UK. But I think this is Putin becoming quite desperate with the situation in Russia and having a lot of businesses putting pressure on him to act.
Claire, would you agree with that characterisation?
No, I mean, I think Putin really is sticking Churchill's two fingers up at Starmer at the moment, because there was a lot of rhetoric in the papers saying that Starmer was going to stop the boats. He was going, in more ways than one, he was going to stop these Russian vessels, and he knew that if they were coming in with other flags on them, that he would attack them as well. But the reality is, he's not done anything about it at all. He knows they're coming in, he can see them coming in. If they're coming into British waters, they're coming into French waters as well. And it's just, and as you said, Henry, about them not having flags, it's illegal for vessels not to have flags in any way.
Claire, I'll just pause you there because I think we may be having some sound issues with your mic. But Henry, I will go to you. Look, my instinct is to go full Churchill and unload on the Russians, but at the same time, that may not be geopolitically nuanced in its approach. Could Starmer have done any more today than what he has done, which is not much?
I think if you're going to, first of all, why do you need to make an announcement to enforce the international maritime laws? Why you don't need to. But then he made a big. He did. Yeah, he made a big song and dance. He did announce it. He did make a song and dance about it, and then did nothing. It is
international laws, after all. It's perhaps the one thing he will sing and dance about.
Right, but he's not enforcing them, because these ships are sailing illegally under international maritime law.
I wasn't aware that you could really enforce international law full stop. Sorry, go on.
Well, I mean, you know, he stands by international law when he wants to. But my point is that militarily, you don't announce what you're going to do in that manner. Not that he provided much in the way of details, but we have had probably, now I'm guessing now, in the region, since he made that announcement, of probably 60 to 80 Russian vessels of this sort, in this category, within our waters. And we've done nothing. So he's looking ridiculous. Now, why has he not done anything? I can only guess two things. For a very long time now, the United Kingdom has been, for some inexplicable reason, I've worked closely with the Russians at a very, very high level, but for some reason, the United Kingdom has been intimidated by Russia. We have been fearful, particularly in the FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, of provoking Russia. Well, I don't know how we could provoke Russia any more than Russia. I don't know what Russia's going to do. But the other thing, so there's that timidity in Whitehall. We've got a Prime Minister who's quite timid in that respect. And the third thing is we've got to have the assets to do this. And really our one combat surface ship that was available to support such an operation is now in the Eastern Mediterranean, HMS Dragon. So there's a resource problem as well. But the upshot of all of this is because he announced it and we've done nothing, he's, again, in another dimension, making us a laughing stock.
It is interesting you use the word timidity for Keir Starmer. I do wonder if you had someone with more charisma, with more presence, who had more gravitas to meet the moment, that this sort of action wouldn't happen, even despite the fact that there isn't the naval hard power at the moment to back it up. If you had a man with perhaps one of the greater leaders of times gone by, they may gain more respect from the Russians.
We have a culture in political life in the United Kingdom, and I think the public and the media expect it, of having people managing, managers in government. What we need is extraordinary people who can work outside the legal administrative frameworks.
Agree. Still ahead on The Late Show Live. Smashing the gangs is only...
We will smash the gangs, we will track down on illegal working, we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
Yes, smashing the gangs is going well, apparently. Only 5,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel this year. 300s today. Great stuff. Still, first tonight, it goes on. A ceasefire is cracking less than 24 hours after it was agreed. We'll be discussing that, as well as tomorrow's front pages, all coming up next. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Breaking news, we have a Truth Social post from President Donald Trump, and without giving too much away, it will be another instant entry into the Trump canon. He's spoken out following his meeting with NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte in a post on Truth Social. He says, all in capitals of course, NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they won't be there if we need them again. Remember Greenland, that big, poorly run piece of ice? Exclamation mark, President DJT. Well, let's bring in the Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosha. Tim, what do you make of that?
Piece of ice, huh? Yeah. It's good. I mean, I think that as we process this, I think the one thing that we can be certain of is the U.S. is not withdrawing from NATO. That's just not going to happen. And in fact, the process of withdrawing from NATO would outlast, I believe, his term in office. And so, and I also think you would need Congress to do that as well. So the bottom line is that I don't think that this is we are going to withdraw from NATO thing. I think this is hey, we pay 70% of your budget, NATO. It's time for you to start giving back. It's time for you to start supporting us when we are supporting you. Just remember, 4,000 kilometers a missile can go. That's London, that's Paris. Are you going to continue to play nice, or are you going to be serious? You're seeing Putin respond. Putin responds to weak people. Obama in 2014, you saw him go into Ukraine. You saw him go further in 2022 under Biden. You see him act in Georgia, as was mentioned earlier. This is who Putin is. Stand your ground, be serious, and don't just stand your ground rhetorically. Do it in action as well.
On that point around pressuring NATO into increasing their spending, he has had success with that, at least rhetorically getting a response from NATO in the past, and I completely agree with you. I think it is interesting that he brings up Greenland there. Again, it's funny to read, but at the same time, it may make people think, well, he actually in the end didn't do anything about Greenland, and that again at the moment is a problem around the perception that he's facing around TACO, that Trump always chickens out. What do you make of that little inclusion there?
Are you really going to say Trump always chickens out when he literally is the only leader to do something about the buildup of the mullahs?
I agree with you, but there is a perception there.
How can you call him chickening out when he's leveled their navy, when he's leveled their, like all the things that we've mentioned? How can you say he's taken out the Ayatollah? He's taken out senior leadership. How can you say he has chickened out? He has actually put his money where his mouth is. He has put troops on the line. He has gone after troops that have fallen behind enemy lines. I mean, this is not chickening out. This is a strategic 2-week pause in hopes of getting a deal, which is what he wanted in the first place. So I don't think that you can say this is a taco situation. In fact, I think it's a very ignorant thing, and it's a talking point from the left and talking point from the IRGC to say that this is a taco thing. So shame on anybody who believes that. Just open your eyes and see what has been done, Will.
Tim, do you think, and you mentioned the Strait of Hormuz, if we reach a situation at the end of this 2-week period where effectively Tehran has a toll booth at the Strait of Hormuz and there will be the requirement to pay to access the strait, that represents a geopolitical and strategic failure for Donald Trump?
I think that that's the 2 week. That's why we have a 2 week window right now. We'll see. We'll see if they make good on their agreement that they've had. Look, this was an agreement. That means they agreed to certain terms. If they don't uphold those terms, or if they say, oh, make some reason up why the U.S. is not holding up our end of the bargain, and they continue to do what the entire agreement was based on, then I'd say that that is a violation of the 2 week agreement, and I don't think our ships are going anywhere in the region. I think they are there, and I think that our planes are still gassed up and ready to go if they decide to break this agreement.
Well, we'll be continuing to talk about the calculus around the Strait of Hormuz throughout the course of the morning, Tim. Thank you for that. More coming up in the next hour, including this.
Bureaucrats in Brussels, those people should not be listened to.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
From football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there.
with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
Well, to be discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is that true? This is fascinating, isn't it? The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered. Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement?
You know what? It's a great question, Olivia.
So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m. only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, Britain. Good evening, America. We are live from the GB News studios in London with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph.
Well, America's claiming victory. The White House hails Operation Epic Fury a military success. But
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed.
will we witness the end of the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation? President Trump has discussed America leaving NATO in a tense meeting with its chief at the White House and has just launched another tirade at the alliance in a post on Truth Social. And
Iran has agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz.
Is this ceasefire over before it began? Iran has reportedly stopped oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz, breaching the terms of its ceasefire. And tonight, a bombshell revelation about where Sir Keir Starmer has been all this time. Hint, it was sunny. Elsewhere,
we will smash the gangs, we will crack down on illegal working, we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
speaking of sunny, sun's out, boats out. 5,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel this year, with another 300 crossing today. And
the bureaucrats in Brussels, those people should not be listened to.
hard to argue with. JD Vance accuses a corrupt Brussels of manipulating European elections and rips into Labor and Sir Keir Starmer. Plus,
men playing in women's sports. Would you believe we have an argument over that?
it's hard to believe. The White House is demanding a ban on transgender players in the Women's World Cup or risk losing America's support to host the tournament. I'm Will Kingston and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome to The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen. Joining me this evening in London is my terrific panel of political commentator Claire Muldoon, former Labor advisor Stella Santakidou and international security expert Henry Bolton. And in Washington is the Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosha. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We'll return to our main breaking news this evening to start. President Trump has just spoken out following his meeting with NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte. In his own inimitable way on Truth Social, he has said, NATO wasn't there when we needed them and they won't be there if we need them again. Remember Greenland, that big, poorly run piece of ice. President DJT. Conspicuously no, thank you for your attention to this matter. That follows what were being called frank and candid conversations being had at the White House between the two leaders about America leaving the NATO alliance. The Wall Street Journal is also reporting that the Trump administration is considering plans to punish members of NATO who were unhelpful to America and Israel during the Iran war by possibly moving American troops out of those countries and stationing them in more supportive countries. A little earlier, the White House Press Secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, shared this, stark message directly from the President.
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed. And I would add, it's quite sad that NATO turned their backs on the American people over the course of the last 6 weeks when it's the American people who have been funding their defense.
Well, tonight it looks like the 2-week ceasefire in Iran is shrouded in ever more uncertainty, despite remarks like these.
Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph.
That was Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt earlier, because it's being reported that Iran has stopped oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz, breaching the terms of its ceasefire with America. The regime's state media is reporting that traffic has been forcibly halted in response to Israel carrying out its heaviest strikes of the war against Lebanon. That's despite the White House this evening confirming that Lebanon was not included in the terms of the 2-week ceasefire. This is what Vice President JD Vance, who will be leading the American negotiations with Iran still to come later this week, this is what he had to say when asked on the issue earlier tonight.
Well, we've already seen an increase in traffic today. Hopefully we'll see an increase in traffic tomorrow. We actually think that we are seeing signs that the straits is starting to reopen. I think you guys have probably seen oil prices have come down, so I think the oil markets, the gas markets are seeing the same thing. But the president's very, very clear. The deal is a ceasefire, a negotiation. That's what we give. And what they give is the straits are going to be reopened. If we don't see that happening, the president is not going to abide by our terms if the Iranians are not abiding by their terms.
And tonight, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said his country still has goals in its war with Iran, despite the ceasefire, as he vows to remove Iran's nuclear material from the country, either by winning the war or reaching a deal. Joining me in London, my panel,
Claire Muldoon, Stella Santakidou and international security expert Henry Bolton. Stella, I will start with you because I know after Tim in Washington DC made a very forceful case for why this wasn't a Trump taco situation, I think you may take issue with that.
Yeah, I think it was a massive blunder, the whole war. It was completely against Donald Trump's personal interests as well, I would say, his political interests. He has suffered massively, he has completely lost his base, but also he's lost the war. We are being manipulated constantly about Iran being defeated and the US being this absolute victor. That is absolutely not the case. If anything, they have boosted Iran's image. That is what they have achieved to do. Iran can still fire ballistic missiles at the Strait. They are still basically, if they want to, they can hold the global oil economy to ransom. US, a few weeks ago, was asking for unconditional surrender from Iran. Now they are basically negotiating with their regime, who they said was their aim to topple. So which one is it? If their aim was to topple their regime, but now they are having a full negotiations with the same regime, it sounds to me like they were forced by the markets, by the circumstances, to give in basically and negotiated on the 10-point plan that was presented to them. And the other thing is, before the 28th of February, ships were able to go through the Strait of Hormuz for free without any controls. This is not going to be the case from now on. So
well, we don't know that yet. We don't know. That is subject to the negotiations over the next 2 weeks.
What has Iran proven? Iran has proven that they are going to take whatever pain necessary if it means not giving up to the US.
To that point, I think is an interesting one, Henry, because so much of this conflict is how much pain can both countries take. Now, when you are run by a lunatic theocratic death cult that doesn't care about the death of its citizens, that really...
That's harsh words for the Americans, but I guess by now I would say yes, that is what they are up to.
I don't think it's controversial to say that Iran is run by a theocratic genocide.
No, it's not, absolutely. But I think it's also Washington that is being run like that right now.
I dispute that. I don't think the moral equivalence is there at all, despite you can have your arguments as to how this war has been run, but there is a fundamental moral difference between the West and this awful, evil death cult. That being said, this awful theocratic death cult can take a lot of pain. They're not democratic. They're not accountable to their people. Whereas, to Stella's point, and she's right on this, America is highly sensitive to international markets and international energy prices, and we know that this war isn't popular. Does that mean that Trump is at a distinct disadvantage in these negotiations because he needs to wrap this up more quickly than Iran needs to?
Not just the negotiations. I think Stella's right in terms of the war. I think Trump has lived his life in an environment in which the tough man gets his way. He has not come up against the Arabs and the Persians in this respect. The more you try to threaten them, browbeat them, humiliate them, the more they will dig in. And they don't care. They will not care. They would rather all die and have their country absolutely wrecked than submit to bullying. And that's a different culture. It's a different way of thinking, a different worldview, partly possibly based in their religious beliefs and the theocracy, as you say. But if you are going to try a strategy of beating somebody into submission who simply their response is going to be, beat me more, give me everything you've got, and you're still not going to win. Because even if you destroy me, it will destroy you in the process. And that's a fun. I put it out on X a couple of days ago that President Trump should read particularly the second chapter of T.E. Lawrence of Arabia's 7 Pillars of Wisdom. He describes this very, very well, and it hasn't changed. I spent 27 months in Afghanistan with the US Marine Corps, and the American military understand that mindset. I don't think President Trump does, and certainly Hesketh doesn't. So the point being that I think that he has got himself into a hole. I think they realise it now. He doesn't know how to get out of it. I wouldn't even... I think it's a very difficult thing to get out of. There certainly is not a victory. I agree with Stella. The regime is in place. The Straits of Hormuz are now controlled more than they were before by Iran.
Yes.
Yet the Americans have told us that they've totally destroyed the Iranian navy. They have not.
Claire?
Well, I don't think it's the 7-point plan of Lawrence of Arabia. It's more like Dante's road to purgatory and hell that's going on at the moment.
It's all a bit highbrow for my taste, guys.
Well, I think the difficulty is as well that Iran came back fundamentally with economic sanctions on us by closing the Straits of Hormuz. They weren't firing missiles at that point. It's now gone beyond that point. But to the Straits of Hormuz, that where is China, where is Japan that rely on their oil to come through there? Why aren't they coming out?
I sense that China is very happy to see this chaos.
Exactly. But this whole torment of geopolitics, we need to get a good handle on it.
I want to bring in Tim Dosha, the Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity. Tim, you appear to have strong views already, but I specifically want you to respond to this. Tim, go right ahead. What have you got on your mind?
It's like we're on CNN tonight. It's like I'm taking it from every single angle here. I mean, the Trump derangement syndrome runs deeply in that studio there in London, and I feel sorry for you. Look, 90% of Trump's base, over 90%, Stella, support Trump's actions. You have no idea what you're talking about. Every single poll verifies that. Another one. We are the victor in this situation because we have completely annihilated their military. We have completely brought them to a place where they actually agreed to a deal. They were begging us for a deal to stop beating them mercilessly. So we have that on them. So yeah, I would say we're the victor.
Tim,
also,
can I just question you on that? Tim, stop for a second. Calm down.
There is a military element here and there is a geopolitical element. Undoubtedly, militarily, they have crushed elements of Iran's armed forces. There's no doubt that our armed forces have been degraded.
All of them. Wait a minute. Hold on a second.
Stop. Mate, chill out. But there are also geopolitical considerations here, and the fact of the matter is, at the moment, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. At the moment, energy prices are higher. At the moment, we can see that the geopolitical situation, if it was to remain like it is today, going forward, that would represent geopolitically a problem for the United States. And we need to distinguish between the military objectives here and the geopolitical environment, which at the moment is not rosy for Donald Trump.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you want to talk about the Straits of Hormuz, you keep going back to the Strait of Hormuz because that's really impactful for you in Britain. That's a big deal for you in Britain. It's a big deal for the people in Europe. But it's not that big of a deal for us in the United States because we actually are energy independent. We have gone after our resources. Maybe you guys should go after some of the oil in the North Sea instead of touting radical climate change, and you won't be in such an incredible deficit with this situation here. So we have to put it from that perspective. You have to think of it that way. We are not concerned as much with the Straits of Hormuz as we are with those ballistic missiles hitting our allies like you in London. We are concerned about their having a nuclear weapon and then actually having a say in the UN on the Security Council. We are having a problem with Iran continue to be, coddled by giving pallets of cash to a radical Islamic terrorist regime, and that's what we're concerned about. Tim, you keep going back to the Straits of Hormuz. That's fine. We need to do that. We are concerned about that.
Tim,
but it was not the mission.
Tim, I want to bring in Henry Bolton. Henry, your response?
Yeah, look, I have no sympathy whatsoever for the Iranian regime. None. Zero. They had to be, that nuclear capability had to be removed. I support the idea of changing the regime. It's about the methodology. And you've said a few things there, just to come back at you on, if I may. We're talking about a regime. The regime has not been removed because the negotiations are with the regime. The supreme leader at the moment is the son of the one that was killed. The regime is in place. The IRGC is still in place. And part of that is because the defence structure that they built was around 31 districts, all operating autonomously without instructions from the centre. But also, if all of their military capability has been destroyed, then how are they threatening to close the Straits of Hormuz? So there's a whole range of things here. And ultimately, we're with you, OK? But This whole idea look, this whole idea that this has gone well is for the birds. It has not. The only thing that may have happened, and we were told it had happened 5 or 6 months ago, is that the nuclear weapon program had been destroyed. So look, we've got to get this right. And when we talk about NATO and the NATO's presence, look, that's a slightly different matter, because actually NATO is a defensive alliance. And don't tell me you don't know that. You cannot legally trigger a NATO alliance support for a war that is initiated by a NATO member state. It cannot legally be done. And this is a war that has, for good reasons, I'm not arguing that the reasons, but the United States initiated this war without involving the allies in consulting with them or involving them in the planning. So how are they expected to participate? You start the war and then you say, right, you need to get stuck in now. There's a catch-up period. That's the reality.
Henry, you want to breathe? You want to breathe there for a second, because you've said a lot, and the key word that you used there was methodology. And I'm sorry, but you don't use the term methodology. That's been done for the past 47 years, was methodology, Henry. You are on the losing side of that word, because your version of how this goes is they get a nuclear weapon. It's easy for you to sit there, Henry, and say, and by the way, shame on you for sitting there and saying, I don't want them to get a nuclear weapon, but then criticizing the person who is responsible for them absolutely not getting a nuclear
Listen,
weapon.
I want this war to be
problem. It is the problem.
I'm not having that.
I
want this war to be settled. I want the regime sorted out. I do not want nuclear weapons in the possession of Iran. That's zero sum. That's zero sum.
We said 4 to 6 weeks, and we're within 6 weeks. And they got a 2-week extension.
Listen, that's zero sum. We're totally in agreement there. But what I'm telling you, and I've advised 4-star American generals on strategy, okay? And I'm telling you
that's incredible. That's awesome.
But what I'm telling you is that I don't believe that the way that this war has been prosecuted at the political level, not the military level, it's been outstanding at the military level, but at the political level has shown great acumen and understanding for the threat, the geopolitical threat, and the nature of the Arabs and the Iranians that has been necessary. Unfortunately, there's been too much micromanagement of the military operation.
Let me tell you something, because I actually listened to the people. Yeah, because I am actually listening to the people on the ground who are able to get things out. They are 100% in support of the United States of America and Israel doing what they're doing. You know why? Because they witnessed 40,000 of their comrades and their friends murdered by a crazy regime that was under the methodology of times of past. It's over, Henry, and we cannot continue to go with that. We have to make a stand. And by the way, we are within the 4 to 6 weeks still that President Trump initially said. We gave them a 2-week extension, and we can pick it right back up after these 2 weeks if they continue to do what they do, Henry. Methodology or methodology?
We're going to take a halftime break in this battle. It is spicing up in the studio. It's getting hotter, and that is only partly because the air conditioning appears to be broken. With me now is Middle East policy analyst at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies, I should say, Janatan Sayeh. Janatan, thank you very much for joining us. We are debating hotly, I guess, in the studio at the moment. What is the status of this war? Who holds the balance of power at the moment? And what does that mean going into these ceasefire negotiations? Where do you think things stand as we move towards those negotiations later this week?
First of all, no one was expecting the Islamic republics to collapse overnight. This was the Middle East's largest arsenal of missiles. Of course it's going to take longer, and of course we're ahead of schedule. Numbers do not lie. Let's look at how many projectiles they were able to fire the first week of the war and compare it to right now. The numbers do not match up at all. We've seen a 90% decline. Number one. And number two, when it comes to how they can close the Strait of Hormuz, that is because of their capabilities when it comes to drones specifically. It's not about their navy. It is not even about their missiles that much. It comes down to the drones. So when we talk about the main main military threat, which is their missile arsenal and launchers, those have been greatly degraded. Let's not forget about that. Now, to quickly address your point, ultimately comes down to whether it is true that we have a new regime in Tehran or not. Let's see if these guys behave any differently when it comes to negotiations. Are they going to provide more concessions or not? I'm going to put my money on not, because ultimately they're different sides of the same coin. But that said, that has been always the president's strategy. First discuss, first have a negotiation that would further legitimize the potential escalation afterward. That's what happened during the 12-day war. That's might what be happening right now. Ultimately, the focus should be shift to the second phase of the war. That's about leveraging internal unrest against the regime, and that's how you can truly disrupt their command structure.
We were just speaking with Tim Dozier in Washington, D.C., and I will paraphrase him, that really, well, the Strait of Hormuz was never part of the objectives of this conflict, and it's not really the US's problem. The US is anti-sufficient. Bad luck, Europe. Bad luck, United Kingdom. My personal view is that his legacy, in large part, determines or hinges upon what happens in the Strait of Hormuz. Is it as simple as, or do you think the American people will accept that argument that, well, our energy's fine, so therefore if there is a toll booth put in the Strait of Hormuz, that isn't really our problem? Or do you think that the optics of that will actually have political implications for Donald Trump and will, at least optically, determine whether or not the people view this as a success or as a failure?
I think the legacy of the president comes down to more than just military victories. It comes down to whether we can see a systemic power change in Tehran. Of course, we've seen military successes, but I'm looking at a Berlin Wall moment that's on the horizon. That's what all presidents will be judged on. That's what Carter was judged on, of course, when he was dealing with the Islamic Republic. But going down to the Strait of Hormuz, ultimately, I don't think anyone was surprised that Tehran is going to leverage the chokehold. That said, they're able to even threaten tolling everyone because of the lack of unified response from Europe. Of course, they don't have an incentive to back down when they notice that Europeans have time and time again appeased the Islamic Republic through sanction waivers. It's not a matter of opinion anymore how much they've appeased them. Not to mention, the threat coming from the regime in Tehran is directly in the European continent. Of course, missiles that are being launched from Russia are Iranian drones. Number two, Iran has an extensive terror network across the continent. And three, if Europe is the first to get implicated by energy crisis, maybe they should have a firmer stance. Let me ask you this question. Why are not Europeans reacting the same way to the Islamic Republic as they are to the regime in Russia? There is a bit of a contradiction there, and Tehran is exploiting that. So of course there comes a point that the president at some point says that maybe Europeans should step up a little bit more. So you know what? I mean, ultimately, alliances are there for a reason, but we have to expect our partners to act rationally, and so far it's been disappointing to see how they've treated the regime in Tehran.
You just mentioned alliances and the relationship between Europe and the United States. We've seen recently, earlier, a meeting between Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, and President Trump. Mark Rutte, I believe, referred to it as open and frank conversations. Donald Trump was, in his own style, less diplomatic. How do you assess that meeting from the snippets that we've heard, and what do you see as being the future of NATO, given what we can agree is elements of tension at the moment?
One of your guests pointed out something significant in the studio in London, claiming that NATO is there for defensive capabilities and operations as opposed to offensive. Well, when the Islamic Republic attacked a NATO state, Turkey in this context, who was not involved at all in any of the operations led by the United States and Israel, how did NATO react? Why didn't we see a reaction from NATO in that context? If it's about defending yourself, if Tehran is dragging in every country in the region and none of them are responding how they should for their own interests, of course there comes a point that the Washington administration, whoever it is going to have some concerns about the nature of these alliances. It is a shared threat, and it's something that Tehran is well aware of, and that's what really concerns me the most. The Islamic Republic is watching this very closely and is capitalizing on the growing apathy towards the United States and Israel, just globally speaking, despite sharing the same threat as them. So, I mean, I am curious as to how they're going to assess this, or what, at one point, Are we going to set a red line for the regime in Tehran? What can they cross for Europe to act is my real question. Is targeting the European homeland part of it? Is the terror network part of it? Is closing the strait a good red line? I yet to see a firm response.
Time will tell. Well, that's all we've got time for at the moment. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us. In the corner of my eye, before we go to our next guest, I can see that Henry is keen for a right of reply. Henry, a quick response from you.
Just two things very briefly. First of all, the United Kingdom gets zero oil from that comes through the Straits of Hormuz. So we are not energy dependent on oil that comes through the Straits of Hormuz. We are not. China, India and others are. Okay, where it comes to us is that we, like everybody else, are exposed to global prices on the oil market, which are themselves affected by what happens in the Straits of Hormuz as the prices around the world are. And the other thing is, it talked about the missile strike on Turkey. It wasn't actually a missile strike on Turkey. It was shot down en route to Turkey. We had a drone that probably came from Lebanon that hit our base in Cyprus, or one of our bases in Cyprus. But it's down to the state that is attacked to go to NATO and trigger Article 5 of NATO. It's something that's done by consensus or by the request of the attacked state. If the state doesn't feel that it's worthy of bringing in the alliance, it doesn't trigger Article 5.
I think that's the right interpretation of Article 5, but I think the way Trump is talking about it is in a more generic way. Well, you know, we're allies, you needed to help me.
I think he's got a case, but the way to have addressed that would have been to go to the allies and say, look, you know, and there are mechanisms for doing this, and say, look, this is what we're intending to do. Who's on board with that?
Yeah. Let's go now to Senior Fellow at the America First Policy Institute, Ken Timmerman. Ken, thank you very much for joining me this evening.
Thanks for having me on.
Some heated debate in our studio and connecting across the pond on where we sit at the moment as we approach negotiations. What's your 2 cents? What's the status of this conflict today?
Well, first, just a word on NATO, since that's what you've been speaking about just recently. Look, we don't need Article 5. NATO ceased to be a defensive alliance when NATO countries under President Clinton decided to launch an aggressive war against Serbia. Serbia had not attacked any NATO country in the 1990s, and we launched a massive war against them. So it ceased to be a defensive alliance at that point. The second attack that we waged in the same way was against Colonel Gaddafi in Libya in 2012 under President Obama. So please, don't give me this bit about Article 5 and NATO being a defensive alliance. President Trump had clear discussions with NATO leaders. He made clear requests to them at the beginning of the conflict. Are you with us? Are you not? And we heard their answers. The Belgian leader, the German chancellor said, this is not our war. President Macron of France said, we are not going to get engaged in this war. And Britain said the same thing until we were winning the war, and then offered to send an aircraft carrier that probably didn't work anyway. Look, I think, please, don't tell me about NATO. I covered NATO for something like 18 years as a defense correspondent in Europe. The armies of NATO are not what they were in the 1980s or even the 1990s. They're pathetic. They're weak. The navies don't exist. They can't even send minesweepers to the Persian Gulf as they did in 1988 in the past. But President Trump is very frustrated, and Americans are frustrated because they understand that we, the taxpayers in this country, are footing the bill for your security in Europe, and we're fed up with it. I am a little bit surprised that the president hasn't.
Yeah, and on that point, I agree with you wholeheartedly that there has been a level of complacency in Europe and the United Kingdom, which has been wholly unacceptable. And Trump's rhetoric and assertive stance is a very positive thing in trying to get these countries to wake up in terms of defence spending. But you talked about the frustration of the American people there, and I want to hone in. You are part of the America First Policy Institute. It is well known that Trump's position for a long period of time has been no foreign wars, despite the fact that he has been hawkish on Iran, admittedly, for
30 or 40 years. This is not a popular war at the moment. How do you respond to claims that this is a betrayal of the America First mantra that he has stuck to, more or less, over the course of his 2 terms as president?
93% of Republicans are supporting the war. Every Republican member of Congress, except for one, Thomas Massey, voted in favor, well, I should say voted against the Democrat proposition to invoke the War Powers Act and to limit the president's authority to act here. He has tremendous popular support for this. They understand, as he does, that the Iranian regime has been attacking us since 1979, since they took our diplomats hostage in 1979. I was in Beirut on the ground in 1983 when they blew up our embassy. I was there 1 week before the Marines were hit in October of 83, and I was back there 1 week later. It was the Iranians who killed 241 U.S. Marines in Beirut. They blew up barracks in Saudi Arabia in 96. They hit our embassies in 98 in Africa. They took out the USS Cole in 2000. They were engaged in the 9/11 attacks. And by the way, Kalibov, who's going to come and negotiate as a so-called moderate, he was the head of the Revolutionary Guards Air Force in 2000, and he personally piloted the helicopter that brought al-Zawahiri, the number 2 of al-Qaeda, into Iran in May of 2001 to negotiate Iran's assistance to the al-Qaeda hijackers so they could come in and out of Afghanistan without stamps on their passports.
Ken Tillman, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thanks so much.
Stella, I'll go to you. We've just been talking about European defence spending and UK defence spending. It hasn't been where it needs to be. That is consistent across Conservative and Labor governments for a long period of time now. Starmer has committed to increase defence spending in this country to 3% of GDP. Notably, he hasn't provided a timeline. I would suggest that fiscally the country is in... I'm going to say stuffed. It's in a very parlous state at the moment. Do you have any confidence that we will be able to increase defence spending when it doesn't seem the money is there to do so?
It is very difficult, as you said, and it is a matter of priorities. And I would also question, if you go and ask the average voter what is their priority, I mean, they're looking at this conflict, right, which is going to have a massive impact on our cost of living. No matter what we do, there will be a massive cost of living. There was this article on the BBC today talking about farmers and how the cost of food is going to go up because of the cost of fuel and because of the cost of fertilizers. The fertilizers cost is up by 40%. Red diesel for tractors is up by 100% its cost, and transport costs obviously are up by 20% already, and this is only going to go up. So if you ask the average voter, I think that they realize that there is a choice to be made, and I don't think that a lot of them will be able to say, oh, yes, right now, actually, because it's not even an option to just increase spending like that. It will require reindustrializing our economy, and this could take decades, and I'm all for it. I want that to happen. I do believe the UK needs to reindustrialize. I think it was a terrible mistake to think that we can have an economy that's solely based on services, and as Henry was saying earlier, that our hard power doesn't matter, and that we can just coast along on soft power, but that is going to take a long time.
Yes. Claire?
Well, what we're seeing now, actually, as the front page of the Telegraph shows us, is that Britain is more divided than when we were voting for Brexit. So when we say we need to shift money to defence, we absolutely do. But where is it going to come from? We have got a bulging welfare bill at the moment. People are talking about the triple lock for pensions. They're talking about the fuel poverty. We're talking about the removal or the bring back of the removal of the two-child benefit cap. There's lots of things going on at the moment. We are in a cost of living crisis, made worse by what's happening in Iran, but we do need to defend ourselves. At the moment, we're wide open.
And Henry, this is what really frustrates me whenever the conversation around defence spending comes up. Government is about
prioritisation. It's about making trade-offs. And whenever I think about increasing defence spending, I think about the amount of things this country spends money on, which are not just unnecessary, but if anything, actively masochistic. You know, when you think of net zero lunacy, when you think of migrant hotels, when you think of the huge welfare bill, and I would add specifically welfare for non-citizens, all of these things are at the very least unnecessary, if not actively harmful. But to Stella's point, there is a question mark there as to whether the people really care enough about defence spending to pressure the government to actually increase it. How do you respond to that argument?
Well, I think the government's got a duty to do the right thing, and that the first thing is to keep the nation secure. And it's also about keeping the economy secure and stable and resilient, the reindustrialisation. So there's a whole range of choices, and it's a difficult thing. And just on the fertilisers is a good example, because actually it's deliberate government decisions that destroyed the UK fertiliser production industry before this in the Gulf. So there's a lot of decisions, the wrong decisions made. We were talking about leadership earlier. That's a problem. And I think when it comes to people's understanding, if you go across Europe, and I've got family in Austria and in Denmark, I know Poles, I know Ukrainians, I know a lot of people in Scandinavia, the public is very well versed in the threat. In this country, we don't like to talk about it, and we play it down. Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, it's not so bad, because it's driven by politicians who, instead of wanting to defend their country in this, want to have the financial path forward. And very briefly on defence expenditure, until 2010, the defence budget was defined by the threat. It was the one bit of the budget that was separate. Everything else was sort of allocated, if you like, by the Treasury. Defence was based on the threat environment and the response to it. David Cameron and George Osborne broke that, and so now it is basically driven by the Treasury. And that's where it went fundamentally wrong. It needs to go back to threat orientation, because at the moment our defence budget does not bear any resemblance to threat.
Yeah, well, some people would argue, certainly I would, that immigration policy has been driven by the Treasury as well, with disastrous consequences.
Lack of moral courage.
Yeah. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
The bureaucrats in Brussels, those people should not be listened to.
Too right. JD Vance has ripped into the European Union yet again, and also unleashed a fresh attack on Sir Keir Starmer. But first tonight, the sun's been out, and so have the small boats. It's infuriating. Britain has just surpassed a grim milestone for 2026. The latest on that next. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. This is your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, for many, it is going to turn cloudy for a time with a bit of rain and then some hefty showers following in. But I think a big talking point will be the drop in temperatures. We do have colder air coming in behind a front that is gradually making its way southeastwards as we go through today. And it's that front that's bringing a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And then, yes, some hefty showers following in behind. Ahead of the front, yes, there's been some mist, some murk around this morning. That's going to quite quickly clear. There should actually be some brightness, particularly towards the east-southeast of England, and here it still will be quite warm, but elsewhere temperatures will be several degrees down compared to yesterday. And then as we go into this evening, eventually that front does push towards parts of the southeast, so turning cloudier as we go through the end of the day here, and a bit of rain as well. A brighter end to the day, though, further west across the rest of England and parts of Wales. A few showers to watch out for. The showers, though, will be more frequent over Northern Ireland and across much of Scotland. Here, some of them could pack quite a punch. They could be heavy, they could even be thundery with some hail and some winteriness. We're talking some sleet, some snow over modest higher ground as we go through the end of the day and overnight. But then, with a ridge of high pressure building, many of those showers are going to fizzle out, and so it's going to turn largely dry for many of us. Clearer skies towards the north, allowing temperatures to drop here, so a bit chilly, some frost quite likely. Further south, some thickening cloud pushing its way in, so temperatures temperatures not getting quite as low here. Nonetheless, it could be a bit of a chilly start first thing tomorrow morning. And then through tomorrow, well, actually, there's going to be a lot of dry weather around for many of us. A lot of the cloud across England and Wales will actually burn away as we go into the afternoon. Lots of sunshine for much of Scotland, but later turning wet and windy across western parts, mainly Northern Ireland, but also western parts of England, Wales and Scotland as another system pushes its way in. Temperatures down compared to today, especially in the east.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
So mark my words. We will stop this. We will smash the gangs. We will crack down on illegal working. We will remove people with no right to be here. And we will secure Britain's borders.
Deary, deary me. Welcome back to The Late Show Live. That was Sir Keir Starmer pledging to smash the gangs and secure Britain's borders. But tonight it looks like anything but has been achieved, as GB News can reveal that almost 300 small boat migrants have crossed the English Channel in the past 24 hours. It means so far more than 5,000 small boat migrants have crossed the Channel in 2026. From memory, that is now about 45,000 plus in the last 12 months. Meanwhile, another country is considering a harder line approach to illegal migration. Rivers in India could soon be filled with crocodiles and poisonous snakes as part of a government crackdown in what is being dubbed a biological barrier along the country's border with Bangladesh to deter crossings. Joining me is my panel of Claire Muldoon, Stella Santakidu and Henry Bolton. Claire, should we just dump a bunch of crocs and sharks in the English Channel as a response to the boats crossing?
What do they think we are, Australian?
Maybe that's how we sorted out the small boats in Australia. It's just the incredible amount of dangerous animals that are in the Northern Territory.
I think this is a really, really awful bad move.
It's bizarre.
But the disease that's going to come from that, from floating human remains in these waters, is something that just should not be tolerated or even, looked at for us to adopt.
Yeah, I need to do a bit more reading on this one. I would be surprised if it is a serious policy, but we'll get more information on this. Stella, though, it is getting to the point in this country where urgent action needs to be taken. Maybe not crocodiles and sharks, but the fact remains that everything this government is doing is tinkering around the edges. Unless you actually change the legal framework that has enabled small boats to arrive in this country for so long now, nothing is working. It doesn't matter how much money you pay to France. It doesn't matter whether you track the supply chains of engines for dinghies. It doesn't seem to make a difference to numbers. Can the government actually fix this problem? Because at the moment, it doesn't look like they can.
The refugee crisis globally cannot be solved by a single country, that's for sure. But what I would ask is, we have been talking about the war in Iran, for the last hour or so. Why do we tolerate our allies creating so many refugees? Because what they have done, what the United States has done in Iran, is going to create millions of refugees. It has already displaced millions of people. Iran has one of the highest refugee populations in the whole world. And this is just going to make it so much worse. So what I would like to see for immigration policy is finally, we need to start connecting it with our foreign policy. And we cannot say that imperial powers, the US or whoever else, is going to play God with other people's countries and carpet bomb entire cities.
Stella, two things. Number one, these aren't Iranians crossing the Channel at the moment. Even if what you're saying is correct, that isn't an excuse not to have strong borders in place. And if you have the right disincentives in place, even if there are refugees which are created as a result of this conflict, they're not going to come here if they've got other options in Europe, and we know that they have to come through other safe countries en route to the United Kingdom, the last being France. They're not going to come here if, for example, they are put in a detention centre before being processed and shipped off somewhere else. But the point is, at the moment, the Labor government is not willing to create that disincentive, and so that's why more people come.
Well, as you know, I'm from Greece, so when you're saying that you know, when you're saying, oh, if they don't want to go and stay in other countries, like what other countries are you referring to here? Because I'm sure you will see that
countries before arriving in the United Kingdom.
I'm sure you can appreciate that these countries also do not have the capacity. And you are saying
that's their problem, not
ours. You're saying that the current refugees are not coming from Iran. Yeah, sure, but most of them are coming from Afghanistan. A lot of them are also coming from Syria. So a lot of them are coming from countries where there has been a very long destabilizing process. And absolutely,
that is a separate but related issue, though. That is not the issue. If you stop, if you have the right processes in place, it doesn't matter about the push factors.
What do you think these people are going to do? So you have someone like Donald Trump who's saying, I'm going to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age. I'm going to target infrastructure. I'm going to target their water salination systems. I'm going to go and target. And where? Which country do you think? Which European argument? Which European country? Do you think that France? Do you think that France or any other European country has the capacity to absorb millions?
My point is that's their problem. That's their problem. The benefit that the United Kingdom has is there is a channel that separates England from continental Europe.
I'm afraid that this is not how relationships with other countries work. You don't just get to go and say to the Prime Minister of France, well, that's your problem, deal with it.
You absolutely do. That's the great thing about being a leader. Go on, Henry.
I think the point about a disincentive is absolutely correct. First point. So I want to make 2 points. The disincentive is the first point. People move, for whatever reason they start moving, they move and they choose a destination based on where they want to go in many cases. So they're coming to the United Kingdom through the European Union because that's where they want to end up. They want to end up here. And as long as the United Kingdom is an attractive destination, they will continue to want to come. And
hotels, welfare, etc.
Organised crime. So absolutely, I think every single one of them should be detained securely until they can be removed if they've entered illegally, and if they can't be removed immediately, they remain detained until either they choose to go or we can send them back. That's your disincentive. But the other thing about the push factors is that actually the United Nations will tell you, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees will tell you that the ideal thing is that they stay within the region of the country that they have left. And the reason being because the intention is to return them when that place is
safe.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's the United Nations. It's not law. It's not a rigid rule, but that's the principle. And we have to recognise that people are moving to the United Kingdom at the moment because they are economic migrants. They want a better life. I don't blame them, but it's entirely up to us. And the European Union needs to take responsibility, and Greece should be at the forefront of that. Greece and Italy have borne the brunt of this across the Mediterranean, and the European Union needs to take a responsibility to prevent them coming into the European Union.
Yes. I lived in Australia before they sorted out their illegal migrant crisis, and the thing that leftist politicians would continuously say as well, there's not much we can do. It's all about the push factors. There's more wars going on in the world, therefore we've got to house people. And you know what? When you had a right-wing government that came in and put people in detention centres and created adequate disincentives, the boats stopped coming. On the issue of illegal migration, a Home Office spokesperson has previously said this government is bearing down on small boat crossings. We have stopped over 40,000 crossing attempts since this government came into office. We've removed or deported almost 60,000 people who were here illegally. The Home Secretary has announced the most sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration in modern times, removing incentives that bring illegal migrants to the UK and scaling up the return of those with no right to be here. In other news, JD Vance has been in Hungary offering his endorsement for the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban ahead of the upcoming elections. But he's also been creating some other headlines, as while speaking at a rally in Budapest, he was heavily critical, I should say, of the European Union, accusing them of trying to influence people's votes.
We reject the faceless bureaucrats who would drive your energy costs through the roof and open your country to millions of unvetted foreigners in the name of progress. I see the way they look down at, they scoff at European and American peoples who want job security and control of migration. And we want you to make a decision about your future with no outside forces pressuring you or telling you what to do. I'm not telling you exactly who to vote for, but what I am telling you is that the bureaucrats in Brussels, those people should not be listened to. Listen to your hearts, listen to your souls, and listen to the sovereignty of the Hungarian people.
The VP also had some choice words for Keir Starmer, attacking the Labor Party for, quote, making energy so expensive. I'll go to Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dozier. Tim, I can't disagree with anything that Vance said there. What's he doing in Hungary? What do you think is the strategic rationale for him being there?
Well, I think he's trying to flex his muscles a little bit over there and say, look, I can speak on an international stage, and if there may be an opportunity to run for president in the future, look at how I handle this. And you know what? A good way of doing that, to tap into that America First MAGA base, is to go over and provide a contrast to the EU compared to somebody who has been a little bit a thorn in the side of the EU and has spoken out against the EU, and that's Viktor Orban. You know, he's very active in the political scene over here in the United States of America. He speaks at CPAC. He speaks at, you know, other America First conferences. And so I think this is what J.D. Vance sees as a natural ally in the region. And by the way, J.D. Vance has been very, very critical of the EU, especially with their digital taxation of our U.S. companies, of Google, of Apple, and really trying to make the case that you got to stop it. And I think he's trying to build up more allies in that fight.
You referred to the impending run for president. The next election is in 2028. At this stage, it looks like the two leading candidates for the Republican nomination are Vance and Marco Rubio, both of whom have been prominent in various ways in the conflict in Iran. How is that battle shaping up at the moment?
Well, I mean, there really isn't a battle at this point. I think that's just you and me talking on TV, whether or not it's a battle. I think that they work very well together. In fact, as we were talking about in the last segment, you know, there is unity in MAGA on the border. I mean, there is no question about what the work that was done through President Trump and the administration, that what works is when you tend to yourself first, then you can focus on other areas, and that is something that Biden, Rubio, Trump, every single person in this administration agreed to. And so, look, I think that at this point, there's unity there. And so we'll see how it plays out down the road. But, you know, I think that, that whole situation with who's going to run, who's not going to run, all that stuff, you know, it's failing right now in the sight of Iran and in the sight of the border and the sight of everything else happening.
There was a leak that came out earlier this week, I believe, of a conversation between J.D. Vance and Benjamin Netanyahu a couple of weeks ago, in which it is alleged that J.D. Vance was highly critical of Netanyahu for overstating the fragility of the Iranian regime. Do you think that J.D. Vance is potentially worried about the consequences of this conflict if it doesn't go to plan for the United States for his presidential aspirations?
I think J.D. Vance will support President Trump because that's what a vice president will do. I haven't actually heard that he had that exchange with Netanyahu, so I don't know if I can comment on that. But what I will say is this: there is no question that J.D. Vance sees the world differently than many people on the Republican Party and traditional conservatives here in the United States of America. You know, he did fight in Iraq. He did see what was happening over there. He does have a perspective that a lot of people in this party don't have. And so I think that is going to lend to how he would negotiate, how he would counsel. And by the way, President Trump surrounds himself with many different voices. That's one thing. It's a team of rivals sometimes in there in the Oval Office, just like it was under Abraham Lincoln. He hired his enemies, political enemies, to help him. And I'm not saying Vance is a political enemy, but he does get many perspectives.
And finally, whilst my brain goes to presidential aspirants, Gavin Newsom's wife has been in the press in the last few days with some lunatic comments on culture wars issues. What's going on there? And do you think his wife could potentially be a thorn in his side for his presidential campaign?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that a wife has gotten in the way of a presidential candidate's aspirations. There's several times that that's happened. However, what I'll say is this: it's ironic that they have, they've been married for 20 years or so, and they have 4 children, and they are, they take great family pictures together, and they talk about family, and yet they do all these anti-family policies and transgender and all of these things that they
Tim, we will pick it. Tim, we've got to cut it there because we'll pick this up. Sorry, in the next. We'll pick this up in the next hour. There's more coming up, including this.
Men playing in women's sports. Would you believe we have an argument over that?
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. This is your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, for many, it is going to turn cloudy for a time with a bit of rain and then some hefty showers following in. But I think a big talking point will be the drop in temperatures. We do have colder air coming in behind a front that is gradually making its way southeastwards as we go through today. And it's that front that's bringing a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And then, yes, some hefty showers following in behind. Ahead of the front, yes, there's been some mist, some murk around this morning. That's going to quite quickly clear. There should actually be some brightness, particularly towards the east-southeast of England, and here it still will be quite warm, but elsewhere temperatures will be several degrees down compared to yesterday. And then as we go into this evening, eventually that front does push towards parts of the southeast, so turning cloudier as we go through the end of the day here, and a bit of rain as well. A brighter end to the day, though, further west across the rest of England and parts of Wales. A few showers to watch out for. The showers, though, will be more frequent over Northern Ireland and across much of Scotland. Here, some of them could pack quite a punch. They could be heavy, they could even be thundery with some hail and some wintriness. We're talking some sleet, some snow over modest higher ground as we go through the end of the day and overnight. But then, with a ridge of high pressure building, many of those showers are going to fizzle out, and so it's going to turn largely dry for many of us. Clearer skies towards the north, allowing temperatures to drop here, so a bit chilly, some frost quite likely. Further south, some thickening cloud pushing its way in, so temperatures not getting quite as low here. Nonetheless, it could be a bit of a chilly start first thing tomorrow morning. And then through tomorrow, well, actually, there's going to be a lot of dry weather around for many of us. A lot of the cloud across England and Wales will actually burn away as we go into the afternoon. Lots of sunshine for much of Scotland, but later turning wet and windy across western parts, mainly Northern Ireland, but also western parts of England, Wales and Scotland as another system pushes its way in. Temperatures down compared to today, especially in the east.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Bold. They are under no illusion.
Ray,
Are you a human trafficker?
boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, Britain. Good evening, America. Hello, wherever you're watching around the world. We are live from the GB News studios in London, England. This is the story shaping Britain and America.
Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph.
Job done then. The White House hails Operation Epic Fury a military success, but...
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed.
The ceasefire is fragile, and President Trump has discussed America leaving NATO in a tense meeting with its chief at the White House. He's just launched another tirade at the alliance in a Truth Social post. It's another epic one from Donald Trump. And
Iran has agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz.
Strait of Hormuz is closed after Iran has breached the terms of its ceasefire. And tonight, a bombshell revelation about where Sir Keir Starmer has been all this time. Hint, there was sand and there was sun. Elsewhere,
we will smash the gangs, we will track down on illegal working, we will remove people with no right to be here, and we will secure Britain's borders.
Sure. 5,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel this year, with another 300 crossing today. It's enough to make your blood boil. And
Men playing in women's sports. Would you believe we have an argument over that?
no, I cannot. The White House is demanding a ban on transgender players in the Women's World Cup, or risk losing America's support to host the tournament. I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome to The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in London is my panel of political commentator Claire Muldoon, former Labor advisor Stella Santakidou, and international security expert Henry Bolton. And in Washington we have the Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosha. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We are going to go first, before I bring the panel in, to our main breaking news this evening. President Trump has just spoken out following his meeting with NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte. The Australian accent doesn't do particularly well with Dutch names. In a post on Truth Social, he says, NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they won't be there if we need them again. Remember Greenland, that big, poorly run piece of ice. President DJT. That follows what were being called frank and candid conversations being had at the White House between the two leaders about America leaving the NATO alliance. The Wall Street Journal is also reporting that the Trump administration is considering plans to punish members of NATO who were unhelpful to America and Israel during the Iran war, possibly by moving American troops out of those countries and stationing them in more supportive countries. A little earlier, the White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt shared this stark message directly from the President.
I have a direct quote from the President of the United States on NATO, and I will share it with all of you. They were tested and they failed. And I would add, it's quite sad that NATO turned their backs on the American people over the course of the last 6 weeks, when it's the American people who have been funding their defense.
And tonight, it looks like the 2-week ceasefire in Iran is growing ever more fragile, despite remarks like these.
Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph.
Because it's being reported that Iran has stopped oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz, breaching the terms of its ceasefire with America. The regime's state media is reporting that traffic has been forcibly halted in response to Israel carrying out its heaviest strikes of the war against Lebanon. That's despite the White House this evening confirming that Lebanon was not included in the terms of the 2-week ceasefire. This is what Vice President J.D. Vance had to say when asked on the issue earlier tonight.
Well, we've already seen an increase in traffic today. Hopefully we'll see an increase in traffic tomorrow. We actually think that we are seeing signs that the Straits is starting to reopen. I think you guys have probably seen oil prices have come down, so I think the oil markets, the gas markets are seeing the same thing. But the president's very, very clear. The deal is a ceasefire, a negotiation. That's what we give. And what they give is the Straits are going to be reopened. If we don't see that happening, the president is not going to abide by our terms if the Iranians are not abiding by their terms.
And tonight, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said his country still has goals in its war with Iran, despite the ceasefire, as he vows to remove Iran's nuclear material from the country, either by winning the war or reaching a deal. We're going to go first to the Director of the Centre for American Security at the America First Policy Institute, Jacob Olidort. Jacob, great to see you again. We're going to start with a dimension of this conflict that we haven't touched on tonight, and that is the interweaving with Ukraine and Russia. This is news coming from The Telegraph in the last half an hour or so. Zelensky, US ignoring Russia's role in Iran attacks. Volodymyr Zelensky has accused the US of ignoring compelling evidence that Russia is helping Iran target American bases because the Trump administration trusts Vladimir Putin. This was on The Rest is Politics podcast. I admit I haven't seen the podcast because I'm not masochistic enough to spend an hour watching Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, but we will take that as credible from The Telegraph. What do you make of it?
It's great to be with you, Will. Thank you for having me. Look, obviously there's no doubt that Iran has its fingers in all the conflicts around the world, going from the Western Hemisphere all the way to supporting Putin's war effort there with drones and ballistic missiles that it's sent to Russia. That being said, of course, the nature of the ceasefire, the current operation is very focused on degrading Iran's military capabilities within Iran, of course, and then, of course, addressing the issue of the Strait of Hormuz being closed off. And so that is the immediate circumstance here. I haven't really read those reports, and so I'd need to look more into the context there. But that, of course, is the global context here.
Well, if we take a step back and just think about how the conflict in the Middle East is affecting American grand strategy more generally, how do you think America's enemies, China and Russia specifically, are looking at what's going on, and how do you think it changes this grand game or grand power game between those superpowers?
It's incredibly important. Look, I mean, Iran has for decades been the great foothold for Russia and China, particularly in the Middle East. They've already lost that. Russia has with the lack of the change in government in Syria. And now, of course, Iran, with its capabilities degraded, of course, Russia and China have less means of influencing their agenda in the region. And I'll note as well, of course, China is probably the top consumer of Iranian oil. It has been obviously involved as in the 11th hour efforts to push Pakistan to negotiate this deal on the Iranian side. So it's very directly influencing their equities, their interests, and restores American deterrence as well towards them.
Let's keep working our way around the map. How do you think the other Gulf states are analysing this ceasefire or prospective ceasefire? And what do you think they will be communicating back to the United States as these negotiations continue over the next 2 weeks?
Well, I think there's one thing that the operation has brought about is a consensus, certainly among our Gulf partners, about not just the threat that Iran poses to them, but also the need for them to stand up to Iran, and they've gathered this confidence because of the successes of the operation. And so I think there's probably a lot of patience right now, wait and see, particularly whether Iran upholds its part of the deal. It's noteworthy, of course, that within the hour that the ceasefire was announced, missiles were reported over Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and other countries in the Gulf. And I think part of that is obviously the state of the Iranian regime currently as well.
Yeah, my understanding is the Saudis have reached out directly to the United States in the last 3 or 4 hours, just before that we went
on air, it was being reported, telling Donald Trump that any sort of toll or fee in order to go through the Strait of Hormuz would be intolerable. Obviously, that would significantly increase the transportation fees associated with the shipping of oil in that region. Do you think it is likely, or do you think what do you think the likelihood is that at the end of this process, the Strait of Hormuz will be effectively governed or controlled, I should say, by Iran, and B, that there will be some sort of a fee attached with getting tankers through the strait?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to know. I mean, we're still in the first day. We just finished the first day of the ceasefire. How Iran really will react and play along, do its part for it. But I think more broadly, I don't think I think this brings about the most stable condition for the Strait of Hormuz in decades. If you go back to the Iran-Iraq War, go back to 2019, other episodes in our history, Iran has periodically, time and again, threatened tankers there. And so, however the next couple of weeks go, I think we're going to see a resolution to this important waterway, to the security of the waterway, and I think that is in the common interests of all of our partners in the region.
You sound confident there will be that a resolution around the Strait of Hormuz, but at the same time, what we have learnt through the course of this conflict is it actually isn't hard. It doesn't take much, a few drones here or there, for Iran to choke off that access point. And if this does end with Iran effectively controlling access to the Strait of Hormuz, that would be something which wasn't the case before the conflict started. What do you think? Would there be? We've heard earlier from Tim Doshad that Americans effectively wouldn't care. Their energy, they're self-sufficient when it comes to energy. This is Europe and the UK's problem. Would that be a non-issue domestically in America, or do you think that would reflect poorly on this administration?
That's exactly right. It's America doesn't need this. It doesn't rely directly on the Strait of Hormuz. And, if there's a joint venture with Iran, that would be managed, obviously, with the United States. And so we would have greater oversight over their actions than we do presently. But more broadly speaking, we have Japan committing minesweepers. We have other Gulf partners wanting to see this area stabilized. We've also seen the readout this morning from the chairman of the Joint Staff, 90% of Iran's military capabilities degraded. They're in a significantly weakened spot right now. They are operating from a position of chaos and desperation. And I think all of that, the downstream effect of that, is a far more stable condition for the region when Iran is less capable of enacting on its agenda.
Jacob Olador, thank you for your time. Bringing in my panel now, Claire, Stella and Henry. Claire, I'll start with you. I don't buy this argument that we've heard from several American commentators that, well, you know what, their energy situation is dandy and therefore it's not going to be a problem for Trump. And partially that is because, any money, even if it's a joint venture, any money that goes to the Iranian regime will then go to rearming their capabilities. It will go to their proxies in Lebanon, potentially in Palestine. What do you make of this argument that says, well, look, it's no big deal for America that the Strait of Hormuz may have fees attached to it because we've got plenty of oil and natural gas?
Well, that was part of the reason why they've said that they went into Venezuela, so they could secure their energy, remember, at the very beginning. But, the Strait of Hormuz is very important to the US. They can say that it's not, but it is because of the way that crude oil and oil is charged at a global charge. But I'm more concerned with Zelensky's behaviour at the moment, going on to the propaganda podcast of the rest is politics. It's almost as if he's trying to remain relevant with J.D. Vance's comment on Hungary as well. I mean, Viktor Orban is a very strong leader. Like him or not, at least he's showing leadership qualities and great strength.
Yeah, Stella, as a reminder, Zelensky's come out on the rest is politics and said that the US is ignoring Russia's role in Iran. He's accused America of ignoring compelling evidence that Russia is helping Iran target American bases. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think it's really weird. I think that it is another reason why I really don't understand their policy. So they are in favor of Viktor Orban, who one of the main things that Viktor Orban does that appeases, that satisfies Trump, apart from the fact that he was the first European leader to support him back in 2016, is that in the European Union, he manages to use the fact that there needs to be unanimity for all the votes to stop the EU from rearming as quickly as possible and other things, which basically helps Russia. And I'm wondering, to what extent is it that Trump is looking at the lucrative deals that he could be having if the sanctions from Russia are lifted, and this is why it suits him to ignore the fact that there is obviously a link between Russia and Iran.
Henry?
Yeah, on the Russia thing, I have absolutely no doubt that the Ukrainians, who have a very, very effective intelligence service when it comes to the Russians, have shared intelligence with the Americans on this, because it would be in their interests to do so. But I think Zelensky is sending the message that he's disappointed there's not been any sort of response whatsoever, which is the American pattern in terms of their relationship with the Russian Federation. And I think we've seen an alignment of thinking, not methodology, perhaps, as we were saying earlier, but between China, Russia and the United States in terms of geopolitical spheres of influence. And I think this suits Trump very well to have those three blocks. And actually, if you think about that, you've got the Chinese sphere of influence, the American sort of greater North America, if you like, including Greenland and so on, and you've got the Russian sphere. That leaves places like Africa, the Antarctic, the Arctic, the High North, and Europe as contested space, where you see all three vying for various types of influence.
Which I guess is why there was a plausible strategic rationale for the Greenland, let's say, acquisition, notwithstanding the rhetoric around it. It does make sense for the US.
From their perspective, absolutely. But they're not sort of understanding the implications of that more broadly, I think. The other thing the United States actually imports a greater proportion, I think it's about 7% of their petroleum products in all that they use, imports them from the Persian Gulf. That's more than the United Kingdom.
That's quite a distance.
It is a distance, but that's more than the United, because there's different types of oil and different types of, I'm not, a chemist, but that's a greater proportion than the United Kingdom. The problem for all of us and the United States, as Claire quite rightly said, is that if about 20% of the world's oil goes through those straits, most of it China, India and so on, and the Far East. If that is disrupted, it pushes up the price of oil globally because it's a global market. And that increases the price of petroleum products for everyone, including here and in the United States. They're not immune to this.
They're not immune, but to the extent that we've heard tonight, commentary from some American pundits, which it's commentary that I actually have some sympathy with and agree with. They're basically saying, well, you know what, you guys haven't really thought about your own energy security in a long time. You've been worrying about this loony net zero ideology and shooting yourself in the foot. Claire, do you think that's a fair argument to say, you know what, we have no sympathy for you because you guys have been messing around with all of this net zero lunacy?
Absolutely. I agree 110%. And I've been saying similar things over the past few weeks on GB News. That we have just got no guarantees at all for our domestic energy. And why should we run on the coattails of America to get this done for us, really, when we have got no scope for, one, defending ourselves, and two, defending our energy?
Yeah, let's bring in Tim Doshire in Washington, D.C. Tim, welcome back. You may have heard those comments from Zelensky on the Rest is Politics podcast. I personally would rather cut off my arm with a blunt knife than listen to the Rest is Politics. So I have not heard the comments personally, but the Telegraph is reporting that Zelensky is saying the US is ignoring Russia's role in the Iran attacks. What do you make of these comments?
Well, I also noticed that Zelensky said that we're listening, or Trump is listening more to Putin than he is Zelensky, or something along those lines. And I just wanted to remind President Zelensky that he's been in the Oval Office twice. I don't know any foreign leader that has been, or many foreign leaders that actually get 2 Oval Office visits. That's a big deal. So I do think Ukraine is a priority for the president, even though the president was not the one who started that mess. He has to try to clean up President Biden and President Obama's mess that they made. So I think that that is definitely something that you have to factor in here. We are listening, but we are also involved in other areas of the world, and it can't be all Ukraine, all Russia, all the time. And so, look, I got to give Zelensky credit. He has to advocate for his country. He has to keep himself front and center. I totally understand that, but he also has to understand it goes the other way.
All right, get your brain in gear to talk trans athletes. It'll be a pivot. Tim, thank you for now. Let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. Still ahead, though, on The Late Show Live. So-called ketamine queen has been sentenced for her role in the death of Friends star Matthew Perry. I'll bring you the latest on that later this hour. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Men playing in women's sports. Would you believe we have an argument over that?
Welcome back to The Late Show Live after that very brief interlude. The White House is refusing to commit to a United States-led bid to stage the 2031 Women's World Cup, insisting that FIFA must adopt a policy banning transgender athletes from women's professional football if they want America to tender a bid to host the Games. The move would mirror the International Olympic Committee's recent ban, which announced mandatory gene testing in March to prevent transgender athletes from competing in women's events at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. Claire, I thought we were over all of this trans ideology madness.
Yeah, so did I. After the Supreme Court ruling, after the Olympics coming out a few weeks ago and saying that they will not allow trans women to compete in female races,
and after
or
Trump's
sporting,
executive order in the US.
And the executive order in the US, why is it then for the FIFA World Women's Cup that was going to be held in Jamaica, Mexico and indeed the US, are we actually having to have this conversation? Clearly, biology, we know, trumps gender. No pun intended.
Stella, would you support this sort of measure with FIFA to mirror the IOC in having gene testing for athletes prior to them competing in the World Cup?
I don't like the fact that Trump is using this as a political bat, basically. I would rather the organizations themselves came to whatever they think is the best measure to make sure that the games are fair.
I think that's sitting on the fence a tad. What do you believe?
I think there should be some kind of testing, for sure. I remember that the gene testing was quite controversial because then it opens up to a wider philosophical debate. I think that no measure is going to be satisfactory, but I do think that there should be some kind of measure for sure.
Right of reply, Claire?
Well, I think that's a bit. I think you are sitting on the fence, Stella, to be fair, because gender is a construct. Gender is what you think you are. Biology is definitively what you actually are.
Yeah, but still, if, as you said, like with biological sex, the reason why there is testing to be done is because that does mean that there can be, for example, a level of hormones one way or another.
No, the fact that they have to go through testing would suggest that people know they're not of the correct biological sex in order to compete in the sex that they want to do.
That is the case for trans people who were born one gender and they transition to another, but that would not be the case.
No, they believe that they are the other.
But that would not be, for example, the case with, I can't remember the names of the athletes.
But Caster Semenya. I think that was a particularly difficult one, and I don't think that case will be replicated. I think it's statistically almost impossible.
There was another one.
I think we are talking about
there were two. And you're right.
We're talking about trans athletes.
But trans athletes are also very rare. There are not that many trans athletes.
That is true, but we've seen, you know.
But we need to protect women.
Yeah.
We need to protect our spaces.
And Henry, there's a principled argument here as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think it's the one that Claire was just about to touch on, which I think...
Sorry for interrupting the female commentator on a debate about
But I think I agree with what Claire was going to say. I'm pretty much sure she'll correct me if I'm not.
Give me the lottery numbers then, if you know what I'm thinking.
I think, look, if it's about fairness, why should a man who wants to convert in whatever way to being a woman be able to compete against women when, through no fault of their own, they are less strong, maybe have less endurance in some respects, and so on? It's simply... I mean, it's just unfair.
Why should a man take a woman's place?
Yeah, I think
that's it at the end.
Unfair.
But it doesn't seem to go the other way. Trans women aren't beating down the door to be involved in male sports.
No, because that's I would suggest because they're unlikely to win competitions against men who are, generally speaking, stronger with more endurance and so on. So and faster. So
it's not a trans debate. It's a trans woman issue.
Yeah, yes, really, yeah.
And Claire, if I can extend this beyond the sporting field, whilst we said that the debate in the United Kingdom, I think is probably the one culture wars issue which has been definitively won by the good guys, in inverted commas. There is still a level of ideological capture in so many of the institutions, and we've seen stories lately where people are clinging on to these.
Do you know where it's
like
so prevalent?
In schools.
So prevalent in Scotland, and I'm ashamed to say that. And it was Sandy Peggy who came out against the Fife Health Board, and she won her case. That woman went to hell and back in order for her not to get changed in front of a man.
But do you not think, sorry, if you have a drive towards equality and empathy and sympathy and inclusivity and all the rest of it, and you appoint DEI advisors who, the default position is that they are going to work, that they're motivated, that they want to do something, and they are going to drive that agenda because you have now created a job description for somebody to do exactly that. And that creates a momentum in this whole thing and actually keeps it going. So even when some of the debate is settled, as we've talked about, actually these people are still in post, they're still doing their job, they're still pushing the agenda because that's what they're there to do.
Yeah, there is an industry behind it, and the same thing.
And it needs to be counselled.
Yeah, the same thing could be said of the renewables lobby, where there is now so much money there that it will be incredibly hard to overcome this net zero lunacy when a right of centre government does come in, because there are so many incentives in place for
it's all been
net
lobbied.
zero zealots. Yeah,
Follow the money.
We'll bring in Tim, because I'm going off track a tad there. This is Tim Dotshaw, Executive Director of Unleash Prosperity. Tim, what do you make of Trump's comments about FIFA and trans athletes trans male athletes in women's sport? I never know exactly the right phrasing.
Trans women.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm going to identify as a man while making this comment, so I have to remember that when I'm done. But what I'll say is America 250. It's our 250th anniversary this year. This is a big part of our country, and this is a debate that's happening right now between a very small minority of people and a very vast majority of people. So I think the president is not doing, I think Stella said that this is a political stunt. It's not a political stunt. This is 80% of the United States of America who have nothing to do with men, biological men, playing in women's sports. In fact, we absolutely know that biological men who have transitioned to females perform 10 to 12% better than biological women across the board. That is not even negotiable. That's not even like for a good man that's identifying as a woman. So we know that this is unfair. We know it's anti-competitive. So what is this? This is an opportunity for President Trump to tell the world that the United States of America is not going to fall victim to DEI. In fact, and I'll end with this, we are canceling DEI programs in this country. Companies across the board are removing DEI programs where they were spending millions of dollars a year. They're removing that from their budget because they are not effective and they only create more divisiveness, not unity. And I think unity is what we need to see here in the United States of America as much as we can this year.
Do you think woke is dead?
You know, I think that President Trump has done an incredible thing, and I won't say the word, but he said everything woke turns to the S word. And I think that is exactly the kind of voice that we needed to finally tell people, yeah, you're right. Just look at the result of what happens when you go woke. You go broke. And that is, and that's not only just happening in TV, that's not happening in sports, that's happening in ESG accounts, that's happening in people's 401ks, where people are, funds are investing in green funds instead of just, normal fossil fuels. This is ending, and I do believe, at least for now, woke is dead.
We can only hope. Tim Dosha, thank you for that. Yes, whenever this conversation does come up, I always think that some of the more loony fringes of woke, particularly around trans and the really extreme racial identity politics, have probably been left behind us in that awful 2020 period. But my concern is that the universities and the school system is still so indoctrinated that it's going to keep churning out.
Just about to agree with you. I had one of my kids graduated from Leeds University. Keir Starmer went there. I'll just leave it with you. She is the wokest person I know, and it's very difficult at dinner time sometimes in my house with varying degrees of characters, varying degrees of political, on the right, on the left, very few down the middle, and it's incredibly difficult because they just do not have the ability to counter anything that they're told, and it's an absolute hotbed.
Yeah, that is the key point. I think that's been the big cultural change on university campuses, is the switch from engaging in debate and discussion and the contest of ideas.
For fear of being cancelled.
Yeah, and now it's shutting down ideas.
It is.
That's all on that for now, but still ahead on The Late Show Live, the so-called ketamine queen has been sentenced for her role in the death of Friends star Matthew Perry. I'll bring you the latest on that after a quick look at your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. This is your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, for many, it is going to turn cloudy for a time with a bit of rain and then some hefty showers following in. But I think a big talking point will be the drop in temperatures. We do have colder air coming in behind a front that is gradually making its way southeastwards as we go through today. And it's that front that's bringing a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And then, yes, some hefty showers following in behind. Ahead of the front, yes, there's been some mist, some murk around this morning. That's going to quite quickly clear. There should actually be some brightness, particularly towards the east-southeast of England, and here it still will be quite warm, but elsewhere temperatures will be several degrees down compared to yesterday. And then as we go into this evening, eventually that front does push towards parts of the southeast, so turning cloudier as we go through the end of the day here, and a bit of rain as well. A brighter end to the day, though, further west across the rest of England and parts of Wales. A few showers to watch out for. The showers, though, will be more frequent over Northern Ireland and across much of Scotland. Here, some of them could pack quite a punch. They could be heavy, they could even be thundery with some hail and some winteriness. We're talking some sleet, some snow over modest higher ground as we go through the end of the day and overnight. But then, with a ridge of high pressure building, many of those showers are going to fizzle out, and so it's going to turn largely dry for many of us. Clearer skies towards the north, allowing temperatures to drop here, so a bit chilly, some frost quite likely. Further south, some thickening cloud pushing its way in, so temperatures not getting quite as low here. Nonetheless, it could be a bit of a chilly start first thing tomorrow morning. And then through tomorrow, well, actually, there's going to be a lot of dry weather around for many of us. A lot of the cloud across England and Wales will actually burn away as we go into the afternoon. Lots of sunshine for much of Scotland, but later turning wet and windy across western parts, mainly Northern Ireland, but also western parts of England, Wales and Scotland as another system pushes its way in. Temperatures down compared to today, especially in the east.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Well, a Los Angeles woman known as the Ketamine Queen has received a 15-year jail sentence for supplying the drugs that caused the death of Friends star Matthew Perry. Jasveen Sanger, an American-British dual national, was sentenced after pleading guilty in September to 5 charges, including distributing ketamine resulting in death or serious bodily injury. The
The court also imposed 3 years of supervised release following her prison term. Prosecutors alleged that Sanger ran a substantial drug trafficking operation from her North Hollywood residence, which they characterised as a drug-selling emporium funding an extravagant lifestyle. With me now is showbiz and entertainment journalist and GB News fan favourite Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, delightful to see you. Obviously, Matthew, it's well known Matthew Perry had really severe problems with drugs throughout his life. What can you tell us about this saga?
Well, I can tell you that his family is supportive of this latest sentence. Keith Morrison, Perry's stepfather, he praised the judge for delivering a highly reasoned sentence, adding, "We miss Matthew dreadfully, of course." And then I thought this was very compassionate and empathetic. He said, "I feel badly for the family of the perpetrator as well. Nobody won today." The ketamine queen is one of 5 people, including 2 doctors and his assistant, who were found guilty of supplying him with these illegal drugs. And I think that this is a very sad chapter of what was an incredible career for Matthew Perry.
Have any of his friends cast been communicated about the proceedings or about their reflections on Matthew more generally as this has gone on?
I think that they've been quiet because they didn't want to jeopardize anything that could potentially happen in court with their words. We will hear from them throughout various interviews. I think in the future they will remember him fondly, but I don't think that they wanted to jeopardize the court while the proceedings were in process, which was probably something they were asked not to do by their own attorneys.
Yeah, now this is a question without notice. I'm not sure maybe how much detail you would have on this, but it is well known that, say, cocaine is a party drug and would be heavily used amongst the celebrity elite in Hollywood. I wasn't aware that ketamine was being used amongst particular groups within Hollywood. Was this something which potentially we could say is more limited to this particular case, or is there a culture of ketamine use amongst Hollywood celebrities?
I think there is a culture of ketamine use in the United States. Maybe it's a celebrity drug based on how expensive it can be, but I mean, that's one of the prosecutor's biggest arguments with this particular case. They said that after the ketamine queen learned that her drugs were tied to Matthew Perry, she continued dealing. And we do believe she had other high-profile clients. I shouldn't say that I know of specific celebrities that are doing that.
Well, you've got the plead the fifth in the US, don't you? I suppose, which is not a legal protection afforded to citizens of the United Kingdom. Kinsey, Friends remains, and this is a separate but related question, enduringly popular in popular culture even to this day. Why do you think it retains that popular appeal?
I think because it lacks. I think it's not PC. You watch it today and you go, oh my God, they couldn't say that today, or you couldn't make that joke today. And it's still genuinely funny, but people just tend to be too sensitive today for a brand new TV show to create something like that. You'd see really negative headlines, people trying to cancel it, but it's sincerely funny. And it's the type of humor that's edgier than we allow ourselves to be today, similar to The Office. And maybe that's why and also we all want a group of friends like that, ride or die friends. And so I think that there's something really special about that idea as well.
Well, let's hope more anti-woke comedies can hit our screens in 2026. Kinsey Schofield, always a pleasure to see you on GB News. With me now to get the legal perspective is New York trial attorney James Rubinowitz. James, thank you so much for joining us. I won't get you to indulge in the salacious gossip, but tell us about the pertinent legal points in this trial, and do you think it was decided appropriately?
Absolutely. And no, I certainly don't think it was decided appropriately, not because we're trying to protect a street-level drug dealer, but because I think these doctors who are being charged with prescribing medication like ketamine to a known drug addict like Matthew Perry, and I don't want to in any way throw shade on Matthew Perry or his family. I think what they've gone through is absolutely horrible. But it is no secret he was a drug addict, and he should not be prescribed ketamine, which is, of course, a controlled substance that has known addictive properties. The thing that I think really went awry in all of these proceedings, because as we just heard, it was not just this one street-level drug dealer, but it was actually 2 doctors as well. I just keep on questioning, why is it that the people that were most powerful and the most preventive and in charge to prevent Matthew Perry from being addicted received the lowest type of punishment? 2.5 years these doctors received, whereas the street-level drug dealer received 15 years, and we, of course, know that will have no impact at all in changing our healthcare system.
Well, you've done my job for me. Answer that question. Why do you think there is that leniency for more, I guess, esteemed members of society as opposed to common street-level drug dealers?
It's a fantastic question. And I think the only answer I think the only answer we could come back to is that these doctors are clearly making a huge profit. And I heard you ask the question before, is it true that ketamine is a known party drug? Well, of course it is. I think anybody going out in the United States now knows that ketamine is much more popular than cocaine, in a way where people, and young people specifically, think of it as being non-addictive. But the reality is, ketamine is legal in the United States. There are 1,500 licensed dispensaries of ketamine in the United States. So I keep on wondering, why is it that it is not regulated in a more powerful way? In a way that would have prevented Matthew Perry from being addicted and dying face down in his pool. And I think the only thing I can really come back to is a difference could have been made if these doctors were sentenced more. And I also want to mention, I'm in no way against these doctors. My mom is a doctor. I grew up with a doctor in my household. But these doctors texting among themselves and saying, how much do you think this moron would pay me? That is reprehensible. And I think they certainly should have been charged more than what they got.
Well, there was obviously there's been an awful fentanyl crisis in the United States. There was a belated reckoning for the pharmaceutical industry around fentanyl. What was it? The Sackler family, Empire of Pain, fantastic book. Is there the prospect of a similar reckoning around ketamine and the people who manufacture it?
Fortunately, I don't think there will be as much of a reckoning, simply because the Sackler family was just such an awful group of people that really knew from go that it was going to be addictive. And they were, of course, the singular entity that had the patent in the United States to addict people. Ketamine is bad, but I will want to mention that if somebody does not have a history of drug addiction, it certainly can be a powerful drug in helping people with depression, anxiety. All I'm asking for is if somebody like Matthew Perry, for example, had a history since season 3 of Friends. He was so famous in saying he didn't remember anything from season 3 onward. He had been documented, not allegedly, he was truly documented to be in rehab more than 15 times. Somebody like that should not be allowed to take a controlled substance that is addictive. I think there are ways to give this type of medication in a way that can help people. So again, it all comes back to we just need some regulations in place in the United States.
Indeed. James Rubinowitz, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Stella, I'll start with you. I won't ask you about the Matthew Perry case specifically. I want to focus closer to home. The Greens have a policy of, I believe, either full legalisation or near full legalisation for drugs. What is your instinctive response to that? And do you think the settings for the policy settings for drugs in this country at the moment are right, or are they in need of reform?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is with something like ketamine, it is something that it can be used in some therapeutic settings. So in a sense, it is legal if you obtain it in a legal environment. Personally, I'm really against, even though I understand all of the arguments made about how if you legalize drugs, then you can tax them, you can regulate them better. But I'm really not convinced, especially for Class A drugs, because I think that the kinds of effects that they have, and you see that with things like weed, for example, which people think that it's completely harmless. And it can be harmless for some people. It can be very helpful for people who, for example, suffer from a lot of pain. It can be, it can have absolutely, but no adverse effects or in small quantities. But it's the same with alcohol. Just like loads of people are able to drink a bit of alcohol now and then and be fine, there is going to be a small percentage of people who will become alcoholics and who will really, really suffer from it. And I think it's the same with drugs, and especially when we're talking about, as I said, Class A drugs, which make you completely lose your contact with reality. I think we need to be serious.
Yeah, Claire, to clarify those comments, in 2025, Greens leader Zach Polanski backed the legalisation of all drugs. That is Greens policy. Let's keep in mind that at least in one poll, the Greens are leading in the United Kingdom. Yeah. How do you feel about a party which is either the first or the second in national polls advocating full legalisation of drugs?
I think it's absolutely horrific. The damage that it will do. We've got knife crime, we've got county lines coming out of every single county in this country at the moment, and it does nothing to the fact that drugs are illegal. They're doing it because there's a very much of a business model there, and people want drugs. Ketamine is a horse tranquilizer. It was for vets to administer on animals, and how on earth it's crossed that Rubicon into humans is beyond me. I am so against the legalisation of drugs. It will not help at all. If we look north of the border, we'll see, in Glasgow, for instance, there is a place where you can go and shoot up heroin, you can snort cocaine, you can do it in a sanitised, safe environment. That does nothing at all to help people with addiction. That is the crucial crux of this. And to make it legal, it will do nothing. Studies have shown that anything that's legal in this country, they've shown studies from Canada, California, and I can't remember the other country, Portugal, I think it is. Yeah. And the price of the drugs have actually been inflated because of tax, business tax, rates, rent, everywhere that people need to pay for their businesses. And it's not safer. The stuff that's sold is disgusting and doesn't help anybody.
Henry, apologies, keep your powder dry, pun intended there, because we need to move on. Still ahead on The Late Show Live, airstrikes blowing fragile ceasefire apart. That's the front of the Times. More on that next. This is The Late Show Live, only on GBNews. Yes, let's delve into some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers, starting with The Times. Who says Israel's continued attacks on Hezbollah forces in Lebanon could destroy the fragile US-Iran ceasefire? And breaking within the past few minutes, we understand that Hezbollah has fired rockets at northern Israel in its first attack since the United States reached that two-week ceasefire agreement with Iran. Let's also quickly bring you a reminder of tonight's breaking news that President Donald Trump has spoken out following his meeting with NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte. In a post on Truth Social, he says, all in capitals, NATO wasn't there when we needed them, and they won't be there if we need them again. Remember Greenland, that big, poorly run piece of ice. President DJT. Henry, I'll go to you first. We've been talking about this ceasefire all evening. To round it out, how confident are you that this ceasefire will endure, particularly given the information that we just heard, that following Israel's attack on Hezbollah in Lebanon today, they have now responded with attacks back at Israel?
Not at all confident, sadly. I'd love it to stick, but I don't think it will. I don't think it will for two reasons. One is that the Iranians have got this network of independent, autonomous, if you like, militia-type groups around the region who all have their own agendas, they're also allied to Iran, but they will continue to operate within their own sphere. Hezbollah is one of those, probably the most dangerous, particularly from Western interest point of views, because of its geographical location in Lebanon, and the Israelis going after them. The fact that the Americans have now said that, as far as they're concerned, Lebanon, and therefore Hezbollah is off the table in terms of the ceasefire. That's not part of the deal. Then Hezbollah will interpret that as we're still at war, and therefore will be responding as such. And then the Israelis will get more involved, the whole thing. I think there are so many places where this can unravel in the next 2 weeks. And as a cynic, I'm not sure that the Americans are sincere about this either. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that the Americans have still got significant naval strike assets en route to the region. Now, that is not posturing. That is serious, sustained military pressure that they are still building up down there.
They've got boots on the ground, have they not? They arrived last week.
There are around about 2,000 or so
Marines,
soldiers.
are they?
Well,
Yeah.
there's about 2,000 soldiers from the 82nd Airborne, including the divisional commander and his headquarters, so they can bring more reinforcements in quite quickly from the United States because they're air mobile. And there are 3 what are called Marine Expeditionary Units. These are ships carrying 2,100 to 2,300 combat Marines. So they've got a significant amount of, but not enough to invade Iran, enough to threaten to do so or for some very limited operations, but it's the air power that they all bring with them. It is massive. Absolutely incredible. So the Americans are not in any way, not even pausing their build-up.
Yeah.
Last night there was still a constant convoy, if you like, of strategic airlift planes flying down through the UK, through Europe, staging through here and going on to the Middle East.
But you're not confident of an exit strategy, though?
I not right at the beginning of this, I said, what is the end state? And an end state is basically that definition of when you can say job done. We did what we set out to do. And I don't see it. And I don't see an exit strategy. I don't see how they extract themselves from this situation. Now, there may be a plan, but it's odd that it's not in any way visible to anyone. So I think the Israelis are not satisfied with the situation. Hezbollah and the militias in Iraq are not satisfied. The Iranians are at odds with the Americans on who controls the Straits of Hormuz and in which way. Yeah. And the Americans are still building up their military firepower.
We'll bring in Tim Dozier in Washington, D.C. Tim, Henry Bolton says that there isn't a clear exit strategy visible to anyone. Your response?
Well, look, I think the exit strategy was clearly articulated by President Trump. We're going to decimate, we're going to annihilate, and we're going to win on those fronts to ensure that Iran does not have nuclear capability. There was never really any talk by President Trump about regime change. There was never really any talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, that is a problem, and I do want to correct one thing that you put words in my mouth saying that America doesn't care about the Strait of Hormuz. Well, we do care about the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, oil is a global commodity. We understand that. What I'm saying is we're simply making the point that we have figured out a way that my petrol price, my gas price is not nearly as high as your gas price because we are energy independent. We get our oil from other sources. That was the point I was trying to make. But what I'll say is what does an exit strategy look like? It looks like the U.S. trying to give Iran a chance to capitulate, trying to give them a chance to surrender, trying to give them a chance to do what we are asking of them. And if they don't, well, I mean, Henry just made the point. We're moving our ships in, we're keeping our troops there, and they're on notice. So 4 weeks, 5 weeks, we were able to do what we've done. If we had another week or two of that, I would think that we're going to continue to break them and continue to make sure that they aren't able to have the role in the region that they currently do.
Tim Dozier, thank you so much for your analysis this evening. Stella, going to you, I'll pose the same question I posed to Henry. How confident are you that this ceasefire will endure for 2 weeks?
Yeah, so what's happened here is the US agreed on the ceasefire, Iran agreed on the ceasefire, Israel is continuing to carpet bomb Lebanon, so the deal is fragile. I think that's the problem, and I find it very strange that Tim just cannot bring himself up to say that their allies Israel is not holding up their side of the bargain. Of course, Israel is not satisfied with the deal because Israel always wanted greater Israel. They wanted this massive war with Iran. They've been trying to get it for a very long time, and now they're getting it.
It's worth saying that whilst the Americans have said that Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire, the Iranians have said if Lebanon isn't part of the ceasefire, we will block the Straits of Hormuz. And that then is a violation of the American side, so that brings them into conflict with the Americans again.
Claire, a final thought in 30 seconds or so.
Well, I just hope, I mean, we're running out of numbers, we're running out of bodies, we're running out of bombs, we're running out of time. Just let's try and get some peace on this, and just try and let's hope that the Pakistan meeting of Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner and JD Vance will get some positivity and get some end to this horrificness.
And I should note that we did hear earlier that JD Vance asked Israel to lay off.
Yes,
and
Lebanon.
let's hope that we do see that. That is all we have time for, and what I think has been a fantastic show. Thank you so much to my panel, Claire Muldoon, Stella Santakidou and Henry Bolton, as well as Tim in Washington, DC. And of course, thank you so much to our audience at home. It is a privilege to be in your living rooms. That's all for now. We'll be back at midnight tomorrow night. Good night.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. This is your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Now, for many, it is going to turn cloudy for a time with a bit of rain and then some hefty showers following in. But I think a big talking point will be the drop in temperatures. We do have colder air coming in behind a front that is gradually making its way southeastwards as we go through today. And it's that front that's bringing a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. And then, yes, some hefty showers following in behind. Ahead of the front, yes, there's been some mist, some murk around this morning. That's going to quite quickly clear. There should actually be some brightness, particularly towards the east-southeast of England, and here it still will be quite warm, but elsewhere temperatures will be several degrees down compared to yesterday. And then as we go into this evening, eventually that front does push towards parts of the southeast, so turning cloudier as we go through the end of the day here, and a bit of rain as well. A brighter end to the day, though, further west across the rest of England and parts of Wales. A few showers to watch out for. The showers, though, will be more frequent over Northern Ireland and across much of Scotland. Here, some of them could pack quite a punch. They could be heavy, they could even be thundery with some hail and some winteriness. We're talking some sleet, some snow over modest higher ground as we go through the end of the day and overnight. But then, with a ridge of high pressure building, many of those showers are going to fizzle out, and so it's going to turn largely dry for many of us. Clearer skies towards the north, allowing temperatures to drop here, so a bit chilly, some frost quite likely. Further south, some thickening cloud pushing its way in, so temperatures not getting quite as low here. Nonetheless, it could be a bit of a chilly start first thing tomorrow morning. And then through tomorrow, well, actually, there's going to be a lot of dry weather around for many of us. A lot of the cloud across England and Wales will actually burn away as we go into the afternoon. Lots of sunshine for much of Scotland, but later turning wet and windy across western parts, mainly Northern Ireland, but also western parts of England, Wales and Scotland as another system pushes its way in. Temperatures down compared to today, especially in the east.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?